Hello, everybody. If it's Monday, then it must be time for a bonus episode of Warhammer Weekly. It's time for a little Deepkin review. We're diving deep into the kin. The fish puns are going to be rolling. They're going to be hot and fast, just like fish sticks, just coming right out of the oven. So we are going to be talking about the Deepkin today, and that's all. We're diving straight in. This is Deepkin City, and I am joined by I think probably the person best equipped in the world. This is Ahab himself. Frankly, it's Domus. How you doing, brother?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I am fantastic. Tom will be joining us shortly. I apologize; he's running a little behind, and I felt like not waiting. So
Caught in the muck, eh?
absolutely, yeah. He's like, whatever. He sent me a note. He knew what time this was, and he's like, "Well, I'm going to be a few late." I was like, "Well, then we're going to start without you. That's how this goes."
No time.
Exactly. There's no time. So Domus, I'm very glad you could join us for your first time on the show. As I mentioned beforehand, I'm going to publicly apologize that I brought you on under such strange circumstances on a Monday, late at night, weird hour, but he is a champion and he has stepped up to help us with this. So thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, absolutely. So we're gonna break it down, kind of dive into everything Deepkin. We'll talk about their allegiances, the scrolls, spells, artifacts, commands. If we have time, enclaves, battalions. This is a big book, and there is a lot to unpack here. I mean, my personal opinion, when I first looked at this book, I was like, I kind of read through all of it, and then I stopped and I was like, I'm going to need to read all that like 4 more times because this is the waters run deep here, right? So, all right, but I want to get your hot take. You've obviously seen these guys a lot. I know you're rolling with your force. This is going to be your new army. So,
Absolutely.
what led you to it? What do you like about it? What has been your experience with it so far?
So what I love about it is that it's elves. First off, I'm a longtime elf guy, primarily wood elves, but I really love the speed that the army brings. That's kind of my mode on the table. Is I like to play fast stuff. That's why I loved Iron Jaws, because last year they were incredibly fast. That's why I switched to Soul Blight, because they were fast, they flew, and that's now why I'm kind of smack dab in the throes of I'm having an eel army, and that's what's happening.
Just slithering across the battlefield, ready
Absolutely.
to just ready to unleash lightning, biovoltaic lightning on your foes. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Shocking.
It is shocking how fast those eels will move and get into you. Yeah. So, okay, we're going to dive into this. So let's get right at the beginning. I think that everybody knows well their general sort of allegiance and command traits, or not command traits, but sort of allegiance abilities and the broad spectrum of how this army works. But do you want to kind of cover the 2 important aspects of it? Because the 2 things that really matter here to me are the Forgotten Nightmares and their Tides of Death table. Do you want to kind of talk about them briefly?
Sure. Forgotten Nightmares is amazing because it specifies that missile weapons can only be used to target Deepkin if they're the closest visible enemy unit. That's really going to cause problems for a lot of armies. Specifically, the Clown Car, I think, is going to struggle with playing against the Deepkin. Cut and Ruck is going to have a hard time.
Yep.
It's going to mess with some of the shooting weapons that don't normally need line of sight, because if they want to shoot a Deepkin, they got to shoot the closest visible. So things like the Plague Claw catapults normally don't need line of sight. The Deepkin Forgotten Nightmares is going to put them back in a little bit of a box where they do. So all kinds of the shooting armies that have kind of, I don't know about you guys, but for me have been ruling our meta, I think are going to struggle a little bit against the Deepkin.
Yeah, I think, I obviously put out a video which has been, I don't know, let's call it somewhat contentious about the nature of shooting in AOS this past weekend. And in my opinion, stuff like this, just the existence of this army and its abilities depresses a lot of the power of the shooting meta, right? Because how do you bring a clown car when you know one of your 5 games you could run up against this?
Well,
Right.
exactly. I think you still can, but it just adds one more. I think that it's good because it adds another counter into the mix.
Yep.
For the clown car. The clown car is already kind of in a position where it's got to play 5 games perfectly to win, but now there's potentially a hard counter, where there wasn't as many before, I would say.
Do we want to chat real quick before we move past the Forgotten Nightmares about the nature of allies and their ability to still be the closest to basically have something else that's an ally and have it out in front, and it's the only thing that can get targeted?
Sure, if you want to do that. I mean, you can. Fulminators are a popular
There
choice.
you go. Yep, the old fulminators. Hello again.
I'm not personally in love with them. I don't love Stormcast. I just can't help it.
Sure.
But I'm personally in love with the Ishlayan out front. But yes, if the ally is the closest unit, that's who they have to shoot. So a lot of people want to do Fulminators, Mystic Shield, get the cover buff if you use Iron Rock Enclave.
Right.
So you can get them down to basically 1+, reroll and 1s. The drill cannons pop down -3 Ren, though you're on 4s, reroll and 1s.
Not as great.
Not as great as the Ishlayan, who would be on 2s, ignoring Rend.
Sure. But there's a lot of interesting choices in there, I think, in the allies. Like, these guys actually have a great ally list. We'll kind of touch on that a little later, but this was the first ally list I saw that I was like, okay, I kind of like what you're doing here. Like, you've got some interesting, distinct options. I wish more ally lists looked like this, with kind of like more interesting mix. There's a couple chaos ones that already feel like this. This feels more like a chaos one where it kind of goes more across rather than just heating the old Warhammer army line.
Right, because it's all the old elves pretty much and Stormcast.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's not just like the old high elves, which some of them are like that, right? Where it's like, okay, this is clearly a high elf derivative, so it can just ally with the other high elves. But this is broader, which is cool. Okay, so yeah, I mean, obviously, Forgotten Nightmares is pretty potent. I agree. They have everything they need. We'll talk about the Eel boys and their ability to be good blockers later on when we get to their scroll. But yeah, it's just a lot of. It also frees up. We're going to talk about these guys' characters, and look. A lot of these guys' characters are the definition of squishitude.
Absolutely.
These guys are rocking like a lot of 5 wound, 6 up save heroes.
They got nothing. So the Forgotten Nightmares keeps them in play, and you need them. I mean, you're going to need them to buff your army or debuff your enemy.
Right. Right. Notably, though, let's put the fine point on this that it is only shooting. So if you do have an ability to say long range reach out with some mortal wound spell casting, like let's say you're I don't know, like an untransformed Marathi with a little she can still reach out and do some dastardly deeds all over your heroes there.
She's
So
artillery, right, Vince?
She is. She basically is. Absolutely. She is living artillery. If she had the keyword, I wouldn't even be mad. All right. So let's talk about the Tides of Death and sort of how their allegiance ability works. And this is probably one of my favorite allegiance abilities ever. I know Jervis Johnson had a hand in this. He has real quick shout out. He has a great video in the rules video, or he has a great segment in the rules video where he talks about designing this. And I agree, this is one of the best like combinations of theme, aesthetic, and rules I've seen come out of this game.
Absolutely, they really captured the feel of the ocean with the rules. So it's amazing. Just to dive in, the first battle round, you get everybody counts as being in cover. I mean, for a bunch of squishy elves, that's amazing.
That is pretty great. It's really great for big turtles and super tough eels too. But we'll get there.
Well, the turtles don't get it; they're monsters.
Oh, that's right. Yes, because they're monsters. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, that's okay.
Good for eels. There you go.
Yes, good for eels. Good for everybody but the turtle and the shark. I mean, even the Eidolon is not a monster, so he benefits. Big wave cloak guy.
Yep, absolutely.
So then you go to Flood Tide, and this is in the Tides of Death applies in the battle round, so it's both turns.
Right.
So then you get to Flood Tide, and that's amazing because now you're running and charging, or you're running and shooting. So if you're Reaver heavy, you can run and shoot. They have an 8-inch move and reroll runs. So they've got a wicked ton of shots at a short range, but that lets them get up into range.
Yeah, that's like, again, when we get on these scrolls, there's so many little interesting elements of these guys' scrolls, and those Reavers are fascinating. But the other thing I loved about this was you can run and shoot or charge, but not both.
But not both. That's right.
Which was a nice little addition. Like, I actually thought that was a very fine point, because there are a lot of units in this book that have both like some kind of shooting attack and some kind of melee attack, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The sharks have it. The turtle has it, and the reavers have it, and the big storm guy has a shooting attack as well. So I agree. I like it. I think it's really balancing. That you got to pick your poison there.
Right.
And 14-inch the eels that move 14 and then run and charge. Oh, that's just amazing. That right there is exactly what I'm after. And so then turn 3 is when it really gets incredible, because that's high tide. And if you can double turn from 2 going into 3, oh my goodness.
Let's face it, that is living the dream. It's funny too, because I've long said that the double turn from 1 to 2 doesn't matter at all, right? Like, basically, I've said you only lose in the double turn of 1 to 2 if you're like basically playing bad, okay? Because like you should be able to be set up to guard yourself against that, because you had perfect control, because that means you took the top of 1, right?
Yep.
And so we're completely unmolested to set yourself up however you wanted without being interfered with. So like if they double turn you into 2, it's because you put yourself in a bad position. But the double turn from 2 to 3, that's where games are won and lost. And these guys are ready to capitalize.
Oh my gosh. And I can see giving away, if you win on 2, I mean, I can absolutely see giving it away to for the shot to double turn into 3.
Yeah.
I mean, because all your units fight before all the enemies. And that's just amazing.
It's smashing and bashing on like cocaine. It's just
Epic,
it's incredible.
Yeah, on an
it's
epic level.
Yeah, and as I know, both of us here currently in this are great fans of smashing and bashing, especially when they go together. We know the power of that when we've triggered off 2 or 3 units all getting to fight before the enemy. Doing it with your whole army is incredible.
Oh, so it's just bonkers. You know, and really the only thing in the game that potentially could interrupt it would be, I think, the Quicksilver potion.
Yeah.
If it was your enemy's turn, then he could fight before you, but otherwise you're going first. Anything that he can do in his turn that fights first, you know, he would get that choice, but that would be it.
Yeah, it'll be the only thing that does it, that interrupts it until we get our inevitable Slaanesh release, hopefully. So I look forward to that. But
he keeps being talked about, right? Slaanesh keeps popping up all over the place.
He pops up in a little bit of mention in this book at a rather interesting little mention. But yes, like this is in Slaanesh in 40K, as a quick aside, has this ability all the time. Right? Like they get to fight first all the time.
Yeah. And they traditionally always have.
Right. And so like just you feel this ability, feels this is a great turn. And there are some extra things in this that will help you capitalize on this as well. So and then we go to turn 4 after we have the crescendo, as it were.
That's right. Then you have Ebb Tide, which lets you retreat and charge, or retreat and shoot in the same turn. So you can get out, keep your little fragile elves alive, because they still are very fragile little elves. And then go back in. You know, if you got Morsar Guard, you definitely want to charge back in for that -2 red, 2 damage. And the Reavers can just back out and shoot if they got in.
Sure.
So I mean, it's so tactically versatile. I mean, that's what I love about this Tides of Death chart is the stuff that you can do if you think it through a couple of turns ahead and set yourself up. It's just amazing.
Well, it's really interesting too, because in my sort of read of it, it really encourages you to be a thoughtful player, but it rewards both you and your enemy for being thoughtful players, right? Like it does encourage this sort of interesting chess gambit that's going on between the two of you, right? For them to know how you're going to need to act in certain turns. And then they're trying to pre-plan against your movements to mute your abilities, and you're trying to capitalize on your own. I really like the sort of dance here that's going on.
Right, because they can do everything in their power to soften the turn 3 blow, especially if they have a lot of little chaff units.
Right.
Which I think if the whole internet's going nuts and saying they're doing Deepkin, if people really do Deepkin en masse, I think it might force a return of more chaff than you see on the table today.
Sort of a plan, like hope to win 3, and then you back out your good stuff and send in other nonsense, basically, like to chaff them.
Or if you lose 3, you've got stuff in the way so that the
Right.
Deepkin aren't charging into all your juicy targets, and then you can countercharge.
Sure.
Either or.
Yeah, although you need to be countercharging on 4, because if you have the bottom of 3 and you charge them, it's still 3. They're still going before you go across the board, right?
Right. And I don't think the Deepkin player can wait till 3. They've got to get some losses going and get some attrition and get back out of combat so they can charge into 3, because 3 really is still late in the game. Honestly, a lot of games are won by 3.
Yeah, it's a true point. And like it is the interesting thing that these guys, no matter what, they're still going to be a fairly low model count, fairly elite army, and they've got some Achilles heels, right? So, I think the thing I said to you beforehand was, to me, this is the army of like, it's a finesse player rewarding army, and it's if you make one wrong move, you could find yourself in real hot water real fast, right?
Absolutely, because they do die.
Yeah.
I mean, the infantry are all 5 up save, I think. So
yeah, 5 up save, 1 wound dudes, and you get 10 of them for 140.
Right.
That's
and if you've taken a 380 point turtle to protect them, that's cool and all, but now you've got a 380 point turtle protecting dudes.
right. Which all right, we're gonna let's just jump into the war scrolls. We've danced around this for too long. We're gonna come back to like the command stuff and artifacts and spells. We'll get back to those, but I want to frame this first with what are the pieces we've got, because to me the basic building blocks of the army are obviously your war scrolls, right? So let's start with the 2 Eidelons, which is the aspect of the storm, your melee guy, and the aspect of the sea, your caster, right? So these are, as you mentioned, the wave cloak guy, which I think is perfect. This is a beautiful model.
Such an amazing model. It's one of the best they've done. And I mean, Marathi was amazing, no doubt, but I love these guys.
I got a special place in my heart for her, but nonetheless,
I get it. And he's the same for me. He hits all the right. I have waited for an aquatic army for so long. I bought 2 Wrath of King's Hadros armies. I was going to use them as Slanesh, actually.
Nice.
So, and now I'm done with that. That's abandoned. I'm all in on this.
Right. Absolutely. So, okay. So let's see. We've got our combat boy at 400. We've got the caster at 440.
Yep.
So let's break these guys down real quick. I actually happen to have their scrolls handy, so we can take a look at them. I don't have all the scrolls because not all the scrolls are on the website yet. So there you go. But I'll share real quick here, just so we have something to frame our conversation.
Perfect.
All right. So we'll start with the aspect of the storm. I mean, I don't want to read all the numbers. People can read the numbers on the screen. But obviously, to me, the big standouts of this guy are his reroll hit rolls of 1 and add 1 to the damage characteristic of his big spear when he makes a charge. And in addition, he can charge in the same turn he retreats, and he heals D3 wounds whenever he charges. So this guy can just bang in and out of combat over and over again.
Exactly. I mean, he is the tide, right? He is crashing into you like the tide, which is just absolutely amazing. And then the -1 too. He potentially has the -1 on an enemy hero, with wounds less than 8. So if there's a little hero near there, you can make it -1.
I've got to imagine if there's a little hero with the wounds of less than 8 within that guy's reach, that dude is probably dead. But because this dude's kind of a combat beast, like
2d6 attacks. Come on.
Yeah,
3-inch reach.
Mm-hmm.
From his fishies.
His fishies. He's got angry fishies. But yeah, like obviously that spear is going to do some work, right? At 4 attacks, 3 ups, re-rolling 1s, 2 up, 2 wounds. Neg 2 rend, 3 damage. Oof. That's a good attack.
That's gonna hurt. And in high tide, if he's going first, just look out.
So interestingly about this guy, he's not a monster, right? Like he's not actually he doesn't have the monster keyword.
He's also not unique.
Right. Yep.
So
So
you
you
can
get,
give him artifacts and command traits if he's your general.
yep. He has 12 wounds, but he does not have a get worse chart, which is interesting, right? He's the biggest guy we've ever seen without that.
Because he's not a monster.
Right, exactly. So he can fly, resting on that 3-up save, obviously, as you mentioned. So because he's not, a monster or a behemoth or whatever on turn 1, he's
In
2-up
cover.
save and cover. Yep, absolutely. So have you got to pilot this guy at all?
I have not personally piloted him. I took the sea guy. I've used the wizard. But I definitely like this fellow. And there's some things I want to try. So I just bought my second one. I'm going to have one of each.
Nice. Yeah, to me, I think one of the interesting aspects of this army is that there aren't a lot of like real strong nutcrackers. Okay. Like you have very specific nutcrackers that need to be used in very specific ways, right? And he is one of them. Like this dude will crack nuts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He has a lot of leverage when you need it.
Yep. All right. Let's talk about his brother, shall we?
Yeah, because this guy is a champ.
All right. So the aspect of the sea, same basic setup, except he's a little slower. 10-inch move. Still flies. This is the caster version at 440. He adds a little shooting attack. His melee attack isn't, quite as good.
His
One less
shooting attack
attack.
is pretty good too. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Neg 2 rend on a shooting attack is never a bad thing. That's
I'll
for
take
sure.
it. And he's got the heal as long as he can reroll a casting attempt, or if he doesn't, he can heal D3.
Which is good because his 2 spells, like he's a double caster, and he actually gets 2 unique spells. There aren't a lot of wizards that get 2 unique spells. They exist, but there aren't a ton of them.
Plus, he can take a third.
That's right. Yeah, because he is still a caster in this army, so he can choose from the Lore of the Deeps or inherit one from the Enclave, as would be appropriate.
Yep.
But some of these spells are kind of tough casts. Like there's a fair number of 6s and 7s and stuff in the army, and
those kill me.
Yeah,
I can't hit a 6 to save my life. I don't know why.
Oh my god, the number of like Mystic Shields I have that is a spell that works 1 out of 5 rounds for me. Let me just say that.
I'm the same way. So I'm like, I'm always, if I have a wizard, I'm begging for arcane terrain on my side of the board. So bad. And the +3 bravery is really, really cool. Anybody within 9 of him is +3 bravery, and these guys are all base bravery 6, and so that's actually a really, really big deal. And there's a trait, if he's your general, you can get it to +5.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one because that bravery buff I think is undervalued on him. I've seen in the discussion so far because one, it's not wholly within or anything. It's just if any part of the unit is within 9 inches, and 3 is a big number because, like you said, this army really is like bravery 6, pretty much across the board. And so, like with stuff like your Namarti or even your Eels, like you lose one, you could easily lose another. Right, if they're just on their base bravery, like that can happen pretty straightforwardly. There's a fair amount of things in the meta right now that will knock bravery down 1 or 2. Right,
it's brutes all over again, man.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, absolutely. So, everybody who's piloted the IJ knows the terror of the bravery roll with brutes.
Oh, it's so bad.
But what's been your experience with this guy? How has this guy worked for you?
So he has been amazing for me in the games that I used him, and specifically with Tsunami of Terror. That's kind of been the linchpin, and Forgotten Nightmares. So you can get him pretty close and still behind people. He's not going to get shot. Of course, he can get charged and put in combat. But he's got a bit of survivability, but debuffing D6 enemy units at -1 to hit. And I personally love the artifact, the Sands of Time.
Oh yes, we're gonna talk about that one for sure.
So that makes it last an extra round. So then on the second round though, you can do it again and you can double debuff. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, that tsunami of terror is no joke. And like that reroll the casting roll is what makes it the combination of the dormant energy so he can reroll it. Because it is easy to fail a casting of 7.
That's
Right.
right. That's right. And you can wait and decide and figure out what you need to do. Use it if you need it and don't if you don't.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it is relatively short range, but that being said, like I agree with you. You can have some stuff in front of him so that he's still not getting shot. But D6 at units taking neg 1 to hit. Oof. That's that's a big penalty.
Because he's not a monster, there's one other thing he can do that we haven't talked about yet, and that's go up on a Balewind.
Yes, that is true. We're gonna pretend for the scope of this discussion,
you gotta talk about it.
Vortex does not exist after right now, but for now, let's talk about it real quick. Let's talk about the nightmare that ensues if this guy's on a Balewind.
I mean, what do you want to debuff? The whole army?
Right.
And then there's another spell. I know we haven't got there yet, but Vorpal Maelstrom. So you can start doing mortal wounds within a spot.
Yep.
It's pretty tasty.
And that suddenly becomes this giant whirlwind of terror. Yes. Like I'll tell you what Deepkin are the greatest argument for. They are the greatest argument for adjusting the points cost of the Balewind Vortex in the history of this game. Yeah, because they can certainly capitalize. Okay.
And his other spell's good too, because it does damage or it heals. So I mean, it's nothing to slouch at if you need it.
Absolutely. I mean, you have a lot of multi-wound units that are pretty tough, and on like your defensive eels, having that heal is actually pretty important because it can be tough for wounds to get chipped off them, right? And so making sure that they get back up will keep them locked in for a long time. Even D3 can be a big deal on a unit like that.
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you can, as I've always said, anytime you can press the green button, like that's what I think of when I, for a long time MMO player, it's like when you can press the green button that makes heals, that's pretty powerful, right? Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's see. Let's real quick. Let's just level set on this guy. Let's talk about the shipwreck. It's maybe the least interesting thing here, but it's important because effectively you're going to get one.
Yeah. Well, you could get 2. So you get to put 2 on the table, and you can either put 2 whole shipwrecks, or you can put 2. You can split it and do 2 halves, it's nice for the thrifty dudes out there who only want to buy one. But max advantage, you can put 2 whole shipwrecks down.
Absolutely. And these things are big too. Like this is a wrecked boat. Like it's a boat. It's the size of a boat.
Yeah, Terry Pike posted a picture on Twitter next to his shoe. I mean, it's a big piece of terrain.
I agree. Now, given I don't know how big Terry's feet are, I didn't really take a look.
I just saw it next to the shoe. That was big enough.
Yeah, he could have tiny, teeny, like little baby feet. I don't know. So he didn't like post his shoe size there. So, but yes, it's a big piece of scenery. All right, welcome to Shoecast, where we talk about the size of the feet of members of the AOS community. Yeah, absolutely. It's the main focus of this show going forward for this and all future episodes. All right, no. So obviously this one's the thing about this to me is it has the little Guardians of the Deep where like they actually have a mortal wound shield. It's only on a 6-up, but it's if you're wholly within 6 inches of the terrain feature, and this is like one of the few instances of mortal wound protection in this army, right?
Yeah, this and a couple of artifacts are it.
Yeah.
So in staying within wholly within 6 inches of one of these features is a bit of a challenge, especially with a bigger cav unit. It's not impossible, but you got to be really careful with your positioning. And sometimes in game, it'll prevent you, if you want to stick up next to it, it'll prevent you from piling in as much as you might like to. So you have a choice, depending on who you're fighting. What do I do? Do I pile in more? Do I just stay back and stay wholly within?
Yep. Absolutely. And then obviously it has the Predators, the Ether Sea, so it kind of has a sort of Nurgle tree-ish like ability, right? To sort of ping non-mortal or to ping little mortal wounds against non-Deepkin that are around it. So
yeah, if you're hugging the boat.
If you're hugging the boat, don't hug the boat. But obviously a very powerful thing because you can set it up as normal near, say, other objectives, for example. So that
Well, not only that, the boats are big enough. If you have two of them, you could do a lot of lane blocking with
Yep.
these boats, and that really, to me, you need to think about where you need them for your army, but potentially blocking off lanes for your opponents is a really big deal with these boats.
And you might think, well, yes, Domus, that's a great point, but couldn't my enemies just fly over the boats if they, say, have an ability to fly and ignore that terrain?
Absolutely, they could.
And I would say, sure, but there may be something we're going to look at later that might have something to say about that.
There might be. The really interesting thing about the scenery, there's only two pieces on the table. So if you're in the mirror match, there's only two pieces on the table. It's not.
Oh, yeah.
So, and the Deepkin mirror match, I think, is going to be really challenging for a lot of folks.
Well, there is it becomes this unbelievable cat and mouse game, right? Like, yeah, the Deepkin on Deepkin mirror match is such a fascinating match. Okay. Let's keep going with our heroes, and let's talk about the king.
The king.
Absolutely. So we'll start with the generic king. And I gotta say, I like this guy quite a lot. Obviously he's got a fairly great stat line.
240.
Yep. At 240 points, I think he's very efficiently costed. Obviously big old move. Again, he can fly like many things in this army. Good number of wounds, good save, solid all around, good attack choices.
Impact hits.
Yep. He has this guy has better impact hits than almost anything except a steam tank, right? Like
it's pretty good on a 2-up D3 mortals.
Yeah. It's pretty solid. It's pretty solid impact hits. Again, obviously this dude's not a monster, and given his toughness, he's great for doing things like sitting on a point in Duality of Death or something like that. And again, benefiting from Forgotten Nightmares can make him pretty resilient, and he can move up the battlefield pretty sneakily to get where he needs to go.
Yeah, but he needs to snuggle with the Eels to give them rerolls of 1s to hit. So
yes. So let's talk about obviously the Aquiline Paragon, right? So he makes your Aquiline. I think I'm saying that right. Let's say I am. Aquiline units get a reroll 1 while they are wholly within 12 of this model. Wholly within. But okay, that's not the hardest thing. It's a fairly decent sized bubble.
It's a 24-inch diameter, really. So he's a round base. So
yep. And the Aquiline stuff is all of the what do I want to call it?
All the Eels, Ishlan and Morsars.
Yes, there you go. Aren't the Alapexes also Aquiline?
I think they are. Yeah.
Yeah, which is the sharks.
And maybe I don't remember if the Leviathan is or not.
I'm not sure either. We'll take a look. Okay. So yeah, this guy's at 240. He has the funny Falchion ability, which I don't even want to talk about because I'm not sure anybody would actually do it. I don't get that one. That seems like we could probably delete that text, and I'd be like, okay,
okay.
But cool story, bro. To me, I think everybody would be taking the bladed polearm. I think the polearm is just
it's the way to go, right?
Yeah, it really is. Between
2-inch reach, 2 rend. Yeah.
And the charge bonus, right? Where it goes up to damage 3. That's a weird one. I feel like we're gonna see all of these with polearms, but hey, whatever.
I think so too. But Volturnos, has the sword, so he's got a sword option.
That's true. And then, so the interesting thing about this guy's command ability, which we should touch on, is if he's the general and you're on high tide, right? So it's
one turn,
exactly. Then you pick a friendly Deepkin unit wholly within 12 of him.
Yep.
And you add 1 to the attack's characteristics of their melee weapon. So pretty cool. But again, it's very interesting in that his sort of default command ability basically can be used once in the game.
Right.
So, okay.
Yep. I mean, it's going to be great if you get that high tide off and you get this command ability off. It's gonna be pretty solid, and it does last to your next hero phase. So you'll have it if you go top of 3, you'll have it through all of 3, and then potentially into 4 if you lose the priority roll into 4. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, it does keep stuff going. And it's on the eels. It's great because it's not just the dudes; it's the eels too, and they've got really nice attacks.
Yep. I thought what's really interesting about this guy is that he also makes your eel boys battle line.
Absolutely.
Which to me is like, you had me at 240 for this package, but I heard eels or battle line and I was like, okay, now you have my attention, right? Like,
and not even to mention the model is just absolutely stunning.
this is a gorgeous, gorgeous model, no doubt about it.
They've knocked it out of the park with this guy.
I completely agree. His little deep mare and like the whole look of him. I don't know who painted both of these for the army and the pictures in the book, but they killed it as well. Like,
and I love he's on the cover. So,
yep. Can we talk for a moment? I know this is kind of a tangent, but just as a real quick aside, for those who maybe don't have the book, can we talk about how much they upped the game on the hobby section in this book?
Oh, I don't have the book, but I've seen it and it's amazing.
Yeah, the hobby section in this book is so big, and it like takes it from like the color that they primed in and like step. This is how we got this particular element. And like they show you different primer colors, different elements. It's really detailed and good. I thought that was fantastic, especially since this is an army that is beautiful and begs to be painted well. Right.
I think this is a painter's army for sure. So, which is another thing that sings to me about this. I really want to put some love onto these models.
Yep. So if we're going to talk about the king, then we also have to talk about the other version of him.
We need to talk about the man.
That's right. The man himself, the High King.
The oldest Deepkin alive.
That's right.
He was the first. They just released all that today on the community site.
Yep. Very cool story around this guy. I do check that out. It's awesome. So this guy's basically the same stat line, except he has one more wound. Yep. Again, still flies. Different weapon, because he has that big greatsword, a named greatsword, the Astra Solus, which sounds pretty cool. You want to talk real quick about the Astra Solus's hilarious ability?
Yeah, so if you manage to roll a 6, if you do that, it's -5 rend. -5. I love it. Oh,
I think that is fantastic. And I am so happy to see that, because I remember the first time I looked at like Bellicor in the 40K book, and he has a sword that's always -5 rend. And I was like, -5? I was like, well, how come that doesn't exist in my game? And then I saw this book and I was like, yeah, now we're talking.
I got a message from a friend. He's like, -5, really? And I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. There's things that have saves against mortal wounds. So the -5 will kind of get those amazing armor save guys that have mortal wound saves.
Yeah, what's super interesting about this ability is it can be both so much better. So first off, let's just talk about this real quick. So for anybody who's like, oh my gosh, -5, that's so stupid and crazy. First of all, it's only on a 6. And second off, it's like, how many things are there in the game that on a 6 they do mortal wounds, right? Like,
yeah.
There's a bunch of battle line troops out there, or conditional battle line troops, that can trigger mortal wounds on a 6.
Yeah, it's the spirit ghosts do, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. All the ghosts, right? As well as like executioners and
like, so many things.
So, but -5 is like different than a mortal wound. And some people might say, well, why not just use the mortal wounds? I think you just made the point. Like, it's interesting how different this can be, where you look at something that's like got a 4-up save against specifically mortal wounds, but this would be way better, right? You'll shred right through that. If they're a 3-up save normally and 4-up against mortal wounds, you're going to slice right through that like butter and get that damage through.
Right. And if you get some damn terrain, oh, so good.
Yep. But what's interesting is if this guy runs up against like like a Bastillodon type of enemy, right? Or something that's ignoring Rend.
Yep.
Uh like Nighthaunt, you just mentioned him, right? So like,
Oh, yeah, right. I mean, it just exactly.
Yeah, you get nothing. Take that, Volturnus. You're not good at killing ghosts.
That's
That's
right.
what we've learned.
You got to put him into the right stuff. So
Yes, exactly. So this dude's pretty sweet. He also has a bravery buff. Again, Holy Within, but a big old 18-inch bravery buff, which is nice. Which is holy, but that's a huge bubble,
it's
right?
huge. 36. Yeah. And
Yeah.
he's on a 60. So
Yep. The thing he has the same command ability as the Little King, except it can do 3 units instead of 1 and 18 inches instead of 12, right?
yeah. So there's a lot of interesting, give a turtle +1, give a shark +1, give your eels. I mean, there's obviously potentially he's going to get +1. So, and there's a lot of interesting applications with that.
Yes. Yes. This guy's, I don't know if we mentioned it, but he's 280 compared to 240 for the base guy.
Yeah, and you get the shield ignore on a 3+ against a spell.
Yes, that is what I wanted to talk about. Whatever. The High King shield. I don't know what any of these names are.
Yeah, I can't say that one. So
But that is the best ability on this guy. To me, it is the reason to take this guy more than the command ability thing. Because this army's characters can be picked out very easily by like long range spellcasters, as I mentioned.
yep,
But this dude has a high chance to just be like, nope.
not happening.
Yeah, take a walk, buddy.
Yeah, Rodigus is going to do a number on this army.
Yeah. Yeah.
If he gets that spell off.
Yes. Yeah. Like, well, Rodigus plus, like, say, them setting the wheel to pick the units and do a D3 mortal wounds. You know what I'm talking about? That
do.
Like number 5 or 6 on the Nurgle wheel.
Yeah.
That's a bad day for all your Ishlan heroes. They're like, oh no.
That's going to hurt.
Ah! Just all of a sudden all your heroes drop dead. It's like, oh.
Yeah. And then he gives rerolls for 18, and I think the other guy was only 12, right?
Yes. Yeah,
so
exactly.
A little better there as well.
Yep. I think this dude's cool, but I mean, obviously, I think it's them recognizing the cost of you don't get the command trait and he can't take an artifact. And I will say, I think the normal king can actually hit harder than this guy in many cases, right? The neg 5 rend trick is fun, don't get me wrong, but on the charge, Mr. neg 2 rend 3 damage.
Yep.
That's a big difference.
I points are super tight in this army, but I've got a build that uses one of each. Volturnus is the general, and then a king for literally that to go around killing stuff. So
yeah, I agree. It's funny because I've built out some armies and it is crazy how fast your points are gone, right? You're like, what happened?
What? I have 6 units? What?
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the quote unquote sort of backbone of the army. Let's talk about the Thralls and the Reavers, shall we?
Absolutely.
All right, so these are our blind elves, obviously. So we'll start with the Thralls. These guys are 10 for, to get 10 of them for 140 points. So what do you think of the Thralls overall? Have you seen them? What jumps out about these guys to you?
So I love the Thralls. I love their buff. We talked a little bit about it before. The sweeping blows buff. You get +1 attack versus 1 wound infantry, base 1 wound models, and +1 damage versus all the big stuff, 4 or more. And I love that. That reminds me of the brutes, and I love that about the brutes. Plus their 3/3 rend 1 damage 1. So they're expensive. They're not brute expensive, but they're not brute wounds either, which is unfortunate. But
Right.
I really like them in this army, especially when you get to some of the support options, and we'll get there a little bit later. But for me right now, I'm super attracted to an eel army just because I don't want to paint a ton of models.
Right.
And I think if a 30 pack of Thralls at 360 is a good buy, potentially even 2.
Yeah, they're interesting because like if they're you have to play, I think, careful with these guys, right? And one of the interesting things about the Thrall packs at 30 to me is you could very accidentally make these guys the closest thing, right?
Oh,
Like because of the nature of like two armies sort of swirling around each other, the C puns are going to continue, right? Like you could sort of not even realize it and have these like a big group of 30. You could have a shooting unit suddenly be the closest to these dudes. And if somebody's able to like lay into these guys when they're not well protected, they gonna die.
oh, they're gonna bravery 6. If they're not protected, they are gonna die.
Yeah.
And I think casualty removal is going to be really important both for the Deepkin player and the opponent, because with some smart casualty removal, you can recontrol and reestablish what is or isn't the closest.
That's a really excellent point. Yeah. So like you might have to suck up one unit hitting you, but like then you could pull yourself out of being the closest for the second unit, right?
Yep. Looks like Tom joined us.
Uh-oh. Is Tom finally in the house?
Indeed I am.
Hi, Tom. You've missed a lot of stuff.
I know.
That's okay.
Life happens.
That's all right. You're forgiven. So we were just talking about the Thralls, and I think Tom, you're a big Thrall opponent, aren't you? Like you're a proponent of the Thralls. You're a fan of you're a fan of blind elves.
I am kind of.
Okay.
I mean, like I'm really mixed on these guys. Like
right.
1 minute I love them.
Uh-huh.
And the next, I'm like, these guys are on 32 mil bases with 1 inch reach. I've played Volkites. I know what that's like. Like so
that is a challenge.
Like the flip side of it is like I know better. I know the pain that is that 32 mil 1 inch reach. So I don't know. I mean, I think that I'll say this. I think that of all the units in this army, I think that this one probably has the highest damage potential.
It's another one of your potential nutcrackers, right? It really is. But like you have to use this piece so carefully because if they get exposed and caught, like Domus, you and I were kind of talking before the show, and like there are some nightmare units for these guys, right? Like a unit of brutes that gets into these guys that's a bad day.
Witch elves? Oh man, witch elves with
Sippy Cup and
especially if like not on turn 3, witch elves will just shred these guys off the table.
Or a mind razored witch elf unit.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Retributors. Think about how good retributors are here because they're at sort of the perfect place to be. Like they have a decent armor save, they have mortal wounds, they hit hard, and they're like, they can basically like in the basing game, they're going to end up winning on the power per square inch sort of comparison and not trigger any of these guys' special abilities, right?
Yeah. These guys have to play to the boat, and that makes everything they do harder. So
yeah, everybody from the dialogue that I saw when people's first reactions to the Thralls, they're like, "Oh my god, these are the best battle line," and like people were like, "Oh, you can deep strike with them just like Volkites," and I'm just like, you were in a different ballpark with Volkites and these guys. It's like I understand what they want to say, but there's just no comparison. These guys will straight blow up. Like they're both on 5-up saves. One has a 4-up ward save with a shield. You're gonna be on a 4-up with the Volkites. Like this is not the same. They seem the same. They are not the same.
They are not the same. But I think the support options so like to me, if you're investing in Thralls, you're going big or get out.
Because you think like a 30 block or what?
Well, I mean, even beyond that, I mean, you need to support the crap out of them. It's a soul render is almost mandatory,
right?
If you're going to take a 30 block, in my opinion. And then you got to have bravery buffs, and so now we're talking aspect of the sea potentially to give them +3, because then the mind razor doesn't sting so bad. There's a lot of ways to support it, but it's a lot of points.
Yeah, but for that witch elf unit, like if they want mind razors, they're still going to get it. Like the reality is, like they're still going to get that. Yeah, it's tough. It's really like at the same time, I could see having a strategic 30 block of these nestled in amongst knights and a big turtle and all the stuff that you would need a Leviathan, or Leviathan. done. Everything that you would need for like to keep these guys as the non-priority until they go and punch your face off.
Definitely late game piece into wounded stuff for sure.
Oh yeah, indeed.
All right, so let us then talk about their blind brethren, shall we? Let's talk about the Rivas.
I love the Reavers.
I got to agree. I really like these guys, actually.
Y'all are out of your damn minds.
Okay. Well, that's fine. So let's do the pro and the con then. So, Domus,
I
why do you like these guys?
understand why Tom says that.
No.
I do. But I do like them. I think they give you a piece that you need.
Okay.
Because you can, like, in the idea that they're moving up behind a big block of Ishlean guard. As long as you can stay within 9, I mean, it's no rend, but you can put out a ton of shooting from 20 of these dudes. That's 60 shots.
You can put out like as much as a Volkite unit with the extra throw hand axes.
We're not playing.
Identical
We're not
shots.
playing stupid dwarves.
No reroll
We're
wounds.
playing elves.
I know, like
We're not comparing against Volkites because this is a different army.
I like these. Let me tell you why I like these guys. Okay. I like these guys for a couple reasons. First off, so they're 10 for 140, same as their brothers, right?
Yep.
Okay.
These are on 32s, right? Do you really think that you're going to get 20 of these guys on 32s within 9 inches?
Sure.
With another unit in front of it?
Yes, because you turn those caps sideways.
You got it. Them eels are longer than they are wide.
Well, that's their whole point, is that if you can block off the entire enemy with Ishlean, and it's easy to say, it's harder to do.
Yeah.
And keep Ishlean in the game, then these guys can just stay behind them and just pew pew.
I mean, certainly this army is a fan of the Tokyo Drift. There is no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
But no,
City.
Here's what I'll say. Even beyond that, I'm a fan of them in tenors for a couple reasons. I think they're a really interesting piece to run around, and there are times in this army without any additional action that you can run and shoot, right? Say, for example, during your turn 2, that would be a good example of that. They have a really strong move, right? Like at an 8-inch base move for an infantry unit. That's
humongous.
That is a crazy move. And when you figure in the fact that like you can reroll run, so they're going to run and like in that turn, there are other ways to have them be running and shooting and stuff like that. But let's assume for the moment, like just that turn or whatever, you can position these guys kind of where you want to be the support fire for weaker stuff that you need to get rid of to get other things out of combat. Your sort of nightmare scenario is in a turn 2 situation. Your units that you need to be charging in 3 and capitalizing on are caught on the wrong units. I think having these little guys be able to move up very aggressively in 2, okay, and put enough shots into the remaining few wounds to free your choice units so they can go do what they need to do on 3 is the right way to use these guys.
But, I mean, those shots are just going to bounce.
Well, it depends on what you're shooting at, but yes. And I like them as objective holders too.
So let's say you have a block of 20. Like, let's say you have a block, your block of 10 Vince.
Yep.
20 shots are going to land, right?
Do you have Lotan?
We had Lotan. I could change it.
You're not running Lotan. Come on now.
There's other stuff. I understand what you're saying, Tom.
Yeah, like 20 are going to hit, 12 are going to wound, and then of those 12,
some number go through. Yeah, I get it.
Some number going to go through.
I know how math works. I'm not. That's why I'm not saying these dudes are going to kill all your enemies. That isn't.
Is that your best use of 140 points?
I think it is a perfectly valid use of 140 points in some builds of this army. Yes.
I mean, I'd almost rather have Judicators at 160.
So, like, again, I think if you're going to Marty's, you're like going all the Marty all the time.
Yeah,
and you're all about there. I just posted a build today, and it's like 80, 90 of these guys. But with the right support troops, I think they have some juice. But you really got to invest in them. but I'm all eels. I mean, that's
Yeah.
my mode just because I like the speed. The eels are fast.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest. Like, if I'm picking an army here, like, I think I would go with, even though I'm the one that generally likes horde armies, I think I'm going with an Aquiline army. Like, I think I'm going with mostly eels. I think I'm going to go with, I was even looking at like the bad decision of like 4 Alopexes and a ginormous like shark unit.
Yep.
Mhm.
Like I like
It's a
So where-
Sharknado.
Yeah, the Sharknado with Volturnos and the Eidelon of the sea. So you're or of the storm. So you're running like rerolls to ones to hit and wound on all of your everything that matters.
Yep.
Yeah, and then all those shots. Like,
Well, hold on. Let's get into the eels. Let's talk about the
Yeah.
eels and the sharks, shall we?
Yeah,
Now, I don't have the war scrolls for these because they haven't freely posted the war scrolls for these yet in a way that I can go get them. So sorry. Like they're here in my phone. You want to read that? There they are. There's the book that I own. So you can pause the screen right there, I guess. But they'll be up when these go on pre-order, like next week or whatever. So let's talk about, there are 2 types of eels. I'm going to colloquially call them offensive eels and defensive eels because I cannot remember these guys' names to save my life.
You will.
I will, I'm sure. So
I was going to say guard and not guard, but both of them are guards.
It's Ichlean are defensive, Morsar are offensive.
Yes.
All right, so let's see. What's our mnemonic device for that? More SAR, go more far toward killing your enemy.
More pain. More SAR, more pain.
That seems too long. All right, I'll think about it.
More pain.
That doesn't rhyme. Mnemonic devices are supposed to like have some form of alliteration or assonance or something. All right. At any rate, let's talk about the eels. So Domus, I know you're a fan of the eels. You're going eel.
Eels.
So tell us about the Morsar first, what you like, and then let's do the Ishlian. So let's talk about offensive eels, the Morsar first.
14-inch move, amazing. Fly, amazing. 4-up save, it's not the best, it's not the worst. I'll take it. 4 wounds is very nice. The thing that I like is the musician gives them reroll charges, and not just failed charges.
It's just so good.
But reroll charges. And then if you're teleporting in with the Soul Scryer, you get +3. Now you're charging turn 1 on a 6, re-rolling. Yes, please. -2 Ren, and double damage, 2 damage on the charge.
Mm-hmm. Only 2 attacks though. That's painful.
So critically, what these guys are doing, right? So you get 3 eels for 140.
Yep.
Is that right? These are the ones that are 140.
These are 160.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the Morsar
160. The defense are 140.
There you go. Thank you. Because I can't keep their names straight, I can't keep their points straight either. When I look in the back, it doesn't say offensive eel 160. So, okay. So, notably, these guys are basically putting out 5 attacks in eel. That's 2, 1, and D3, right? So
Yep.
I'm just averaging it out. And realistically, the D3 out of the like eel are okay, whatever. They're fine. They're just they're fine. They're no rend 1 damage. What's interesting about these guys is that like they're the offensive version, and barring a charge, they have no rend.
Right.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
But as you mentioned, on the charge, the 2 attack, 2-inch range spears go to -2 rend and damage characteristic 2, right? Which is pretty great. We've already mentioned that there are some ways to reroll 1s to hit because we looked at the king. There's also some other methods of reroll 1s to hit with these guys sprinkled throughout.
They're elves, so they're 3s and 3s, which is great.
3s. You get reroll 1s to wound from the 1 Eidelon as well.
Yep. Exactly. And they have this really, which I think people probably read this ability. I don't know if they underestimate it or not, but I think it is really good.
It's amazing.
And that is their biovoltaic blast, right? So once per battle at the start of the combat phase, so after you've charged, but at the start of the combat phase, before we've started doing pile-ins and attacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the start of the phase. You can say that the unit will unleash their biovoltaic energy. If you do so, roll 1 die for each model in the unit. Not in contact with the enemy. Just each model in the unit.
Sure.
Okay. For each 3+, you pick an enemy unit within 3 inches of this unit. That unit suffers a mortal wound. For each 6+, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds.
And
I
that
think
can
this
go
is a great
bonkers.
ability. Yeah.
On a unit of 9.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily love it on the charge. Sometimes it's better to hold it because you're potentially, if you're charging, you're already going full kill. So sometimes it's better to save it for when you
Let them come
charged.
in and then pop it.
And then because it's the beginning of the combat phase, so they charge you and then you zap them.
Yeah. Come on in, Mr. Monster.
You really want to do that.
Yeah, what's interesting to me about this too is it's another unit within 3 inches of this unit.
Yeah,
So
so you can hop lines with it.
Exactly.
And it's not 3 inches of each model, it's 3 inches of the total unit. So like this allows you to do the cheaty shield throw thing, but zap just something else in the area.
Yep.
That needs mortal wounds. Yeah.
Yep. You got it. And it's just sort of like it's one of those abilities. I'll tell you what kind of sold me on little abilities like that. It's seeing you use that. There's just no trading with some people or whatever out of your KO, which is just like, seems like the most minor of thing. It's like once a game when you sort of wound somebody or whatever, you can do this extra little D3 mortal wounds thing. Right. Yep. And now,
sometimes.
Yeah. And like watching how often that was a total deal maker for you. Right. Yep. It doesn't have the same reach, but it has a lot of the same capability. Like when you need to crack the egg, it's there to crack the egg.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. That's why I like it in the opponent's turn, because if you can just do enough damage and then you can kill him in combat, you've freed yourself up, which is a big deal. Because these guys need to charge, free up, and get charging again.
Yeah. These guys' worst nightmare is like stuff getting the drop on them and them getting stuck in, right? And then having to retreat and not being in a turn where they can like retreat and charge, i.e. not ebb tide or something like that, right? Because they're much less efficient if they get charged. So somebody dropping and hitting them is a bad day for these dudes. They need to be in the mix.
And with the 14-inch move, I mean, you're gonna get charged, but you're gonna have a lot of control over when that's gonna happen.
Yep. So let's talk about their shield brothers, quite literally. Let's talk about the Ishlean Guard, the other half of this. So
these guys are so good.
I knew these would speak to Tom and his innately defensive nature. Like if there was ever a unit written for Tom, this is it. It's an elf that's nearly unbreakable. So, all right, Domus, you want to walk us through these guys?
Nine packs. I'm a big fan of 9 packs. So they actually have a sword, and they don't have the reach, but they have 3 attacks instead of 2.
Yeah.
So which is really cool. They have same fly, same save. Everything about them to save is the same with the reroll charges, except for the special ability. So they have the biovoltaic barrier, and they ignore all rend. And if they charge, their save goes from 4 to 3. And if it's turn 1, you count as being in cover. Well, you charge, so you wouldn't get that. But still, a 3-up save on these guys ignoring rend is amazing.
Yep. So they have like old school ethereal.
They're like the best bait, and because you control where ranged attacks go, they're real good at that.
That's exactly it. So people talk about the fulminators, but for me, these are the guys I'm screening my army with all day long, because I play against enough drill cannons to know how much those things hurt, and they hurt.
Yeah, and like these guys with the benefit of
these guys Tokyo drifting, Vince, and then sending through the gap. You're one person to get that half-inch, like 1-inch barrier. Get one of those damage eels through the gap, the 1-inch gap, and then everybody else just 2-inch reaches over the top of them. Is that what you're talking about?
Right.
Yeah. Do you remember like the old movies from sort of the 50s where they would have big like musical interlude numbers in a pool and like people would be swimming around each other in these sort of complex patterns where like 2 people would turn sideways in the pool and then one person would swim through them?
Yes.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. Exactly. I mean, that's what it is, right? It's like Tokyo drifting the defensive eels in this like little dance of circle around the army, and then in the middle, in this perpendicular pattern, out come the offensive eels to get in there and do the dirty work, right?
And then take aspect of the sea, debuff to hit, and the heal, and I mean, you can just. I mean, these guys to me are the linchpin of the army, just hands down.
Yep.
They're just so good. Ugh.
A 9-pack can do so much. It's just amazing.
Yep.
And it's not real expensive at 140 for 3.
It's really not. I mean, I'll say that I think these guys have 2 interesting weaknesses. Okay. And that is that, one, they have no like mortal wound protection and are going to be fairly difficult to get a hold of any, right? Like it's going to be rare you keep these guys within 6 inches of a ship.
Yep.
And, they are rocking like it's 12 wounds. That's what it is here, right? It's
for 3. Yes.
Yeah. 12 wounds for 3. And they are battle line with the right general.
With an Aquiline general, which is what you're going to have anyways.
Sure. Like, obviously there are situations. I've seen a lot of lists.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people want to get the turn 2 high tide. And so they're
going to bring your general to be an Echelon, right? But okay. But to me, their nightmare is either like a dedicated mortal wound generation capability, right? Something out of like Tzeentch or Skyer or Nurgle or a lot of these things that can sort of spam out a fair amount of mortal wounds, right? Because if you lose these guys in a bad deal, that's a big anvil of your army that breaks down, right? The other thing is
attacks.
Yeah,
all of the attacks.
Massed attacks, right? Like even if they're on like a straight 3-up and somebody gets into them with like a 40-pack of buffed skeletons.
That's what I was going to say. Like a double pylon skeletons, numbers are going to be your worst enemy.
Right. I mean, they'll just shred through these guys, right? Because like you're going to roll some 1s and 2s in that case, right?
Absolutely.
So there's no reroll 1s in this army.
But that being said, these dudes are solid as a rock. Like I really think these are a great unit. They have obvious weaknesses, but I think they're a really solid unit.
I think the heal, we talked about this earlier, Vince, the heal is so huge with these guys.
Agreed. Like, yep. This should be like the obvious target for your aspect of the sea to have that heal online and ready to go when he needs to for them. Yup. Okay. So let's talk about while we're in eels, let's move up to the big boy. Well, bigger boy. Let's move up to the shark. Right? So the Alapex, who sadly doesn't get much love. We got a 12-inch move. He's 8 wounds. He's a 4-up save and a 6 bravery. He's 140 for 1 shark. Yeah. I mean, what's your feeling on the shark right now?
I mean, do you want my honest feeling or do you want my biased feeling?
Whatever, man. Give some thoughts. Shark thoughts right now. We're doing our impressions.
Go ahead, Domus.
So the shark at 140, the shark is an amazing model. So I'm going to have a shark.
Sure.
Is it the best buy? No, it's probably not. But I think if you've got a shark, maybe or 2, there's some interesting stuff you can do with Volturnus and +1 attacks, especially if you're getting into stuff that's wounded. But by no means do I think they're miracle workers either. So, but the bite is pretty tasty, and if you get 2 of those, 3/3, Ren 2, damage 3, I like it. I think again, it's like everything else in this army. It's got to have the support. It's got to have its buddies backing it up to do anything worthwhile. So but I love the model. So it's absolutely happening.
Sure.
Just period.
Tom, your shark thoughts?
I mean, it's the chariot problem. Is the first what I would say. Like it is. You like. Well, you know what this is. This is a more offensive. This is a more offensive Skycutter.
Sure. I mean, look, the guy is rocking 10 attacks, and one of them is -2 rend, and 4 of them are -1 rend. It's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. Like, I really want to run this guy. Like. So the observations that I would make.
Yeah.
One, this guy is an Aquiline. meaning that the rerolls, like the broadcasted bubble rerolls from the named king, and from the aspect of the storm, catch these guys. So all these attacks could easily be at reroll ones to hit and wound.
Sure.
Okay. Obviously, he's going to benefit greatly at high tide.
Absolutely.
And so because he's going to go from like 10 attacks to he's going to gain basically another 13 or he's going to go to 13 attacks with the most importantly the ferocious bite, obviously doubling the number of attacks.
Yes.
You can run these guys in units of 4. That would be aggressive on a chariot base. I recognize that. But I got to tell you, I'm super tempted by it because like, I mean, I know you'd never get them in. And it's a terrible idea.
But bravery 6.
But I mean, like, sure, I guess. I mean, it depends on how you're running them. Like, I understand you're afraid of them running.
I would say the chance of you losing more than one though in a turn is fairly rare.
Right, that's what I'm talking about because it's a 4-up save. If it's anywhere near your turtle, it might be a permanent 3-up save. And like how I imagine running.
It's a monster. The shark's a monster.
Yeah, it's a monster. Like how I would imagine, which having the monster key. Well, you need to be a monster keyword. I was gonna say this could be a 24 wound duality of death, but it's not a behemoth, so it doesn't count.
A 3 or 4 pack is interesting with the +1 attack.
Yeah,
that's where it really gets interesting for sure.
Yeah, like to me, I could see this being your like. This is one of them that I think it would be fascinating to sit back. Because like you could go with the harpoon launcher. I mean, technically, let's be honest here. The harpoon launcher is patently better than the net launcher.
Yeah, I would go with that.
Yeah.
Because it has the same potential damage, but if you miss on any rolls, damage is still getting through.
Right, sure.
And it's a longer range.
A bit of a range,
So patently, the harpoon launcher is better. Now that said, I want to throw around a bunch of 3 damage attacks.
Sure.
So I would probably end up doing the net launcher because I like as a ridiculous like I want to shoot a bunch of 3 damage attacks. But all that to say that doesn't matter. This gives like unlike a lot of the other units, like we're talking about holding back and doing that turn 3 charge.
Mm-hmm.
These guys have like functionality in those turns 1 and 2 with range attacks before they actually get in for that big round of that big priority charge.
Sure.
I would be tempted to run these guys, especially with those rerolls coming in hot. An interesting thing that I don't know if this was intended or not, but if you look at the Bloodthirsty Predators ability, it says at the start of your charge phase, if this unit is within 12 inches of any enemy models that have been allocated any wounds, you can reroll charge rolls for this unit in that charge phase. Doesn't matter who you charge.
That's right. They got a whiff of blood.
Yeah, there's blood in the water, friends. If anyone has been damaged within 12 inches of that unit, and if you're running 4 of these guys, their footprint, their reach of where that 12 inches is huge. They're suddenly on reroll charges.
They're on 75s. So.
Oh, they're on the 75s? They're not. Man, they're fine.
They're on the smaller chariot base, right? Like the mini chariot base. Right?
I think it's the same as 75 as Palador size.
Oh man,
are they really on that small? I thought they were at least on like 92s.
No. I think I think you're right, Domus. I think they're on like Varangard bases, right?
Oh, I'm right.
Yeah, there you go. They're on Varangard bases, basically, right?
Yes. I think that's what's on 75s.
Yeah, because like the 60s are the normal cav, Varangard are on the 75s. Which again, like that's not unreasonable, let's say. And they seem like a really interesting late charge to me, is what I would say.
Actually, flipping some wounds off early on. The 3 I struggle with, but 1 for sure.
Yeah, let me just say they're not good. Like I'm under no illusions here of like optimization or anything.
You know what? I was struggling to find a good picture of them, and I really didn't see a great picture till I saw the book. Yeah. There is a great white paint job in the book.
Yeah.
And for me that just sold it. I'm like, why we needed to lead with that? Come on.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, here's what I'll say too. So I agree with you. It's the chariot thing, but I've often found a single chariot to be very useful.
Yeah.
Okay. Like there is something to be said for a relatively competent individual unit. As you mentioned, this thing has a ranged attack. I think of this thing operating like a shark, right? Where it just kind of circles and it's kind of floating around and waiting for its moment. Like oftentimes with chariots, they've been things that have done very important work for me. They'll hold a point until they need to leave that point and go tackle or clean up other small stuff.
Go run up the table or
float around edges. And that's what this dude is. He's a little hunter, just kind of floating around the edge, shooting, trying to pick stuff off, waiting to get in there on that long ball, rerollable charge when there's blood in the water, where he can just hit something and do what he needs to do. Right.
And especially if he's getting all his attacks before they're going to get to reprise.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a decreasing profile, so his numbers are going to stay up. And again, like if you're building around the reroll ones, you could have a pretty solid 2-drop army with one of these in it.
Sure. So let's talk about the big turtle. We got so much more to cover, so we got to keep this snappy. Let's talk about the giant turtle, the Leviathan, the only actual behemoth in the army. So this guy is a monster. Ironically, he broadcasts cover he cannot benefit from.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the drummer. So it's the drummer that provides the cover because he's manipulating the waves.
Why can he not benefit from that cover?
Because he's a monster.
He's a monster. He cannot benefit from cover. Yeah. So he's a 12-inch move, 16 wound, 3-up save dude. Big turtle. The
very definition of a tank.
Yes, indeed. He is pretty rock solid. He flies like most of this stuff. And he's got a good number of attacks. He's got a nice little ranged attack. It's decent enough. Like he's got a harpoon launcher.
Thing.
Yep. He's got some crushing jaws that are relatively accurate at 2-up, -2 damage D6. The important ability being, of course, if you roll that 6-up to hit, it suddenly is 6 mortal wounds. So that's a nice big bite out of something.
And if you're +1 attack, reroll them ones. Oh, that's when it starts to get crazy.
Yep. And obviously, yes, the big thing of this is Deepkin units are treated as being in cover while they are wholly within 12 inches.
By the way,
of this thing.
This dude is screaming for an allied lore master.
Okay.
Yeah, for the rerolls.
Yeah, like the spell on the Hand of Glory.
Oh, yeah, sure.
All failed hits and wounds for one model within the unit.
Yeah.
And this dude could do some work with straight rerolls, hits, and wounds.
Sure.
He's on a 120 too, so
it's on a good that's not too huge.
No,
like, that's not inordinately large.
No, it's not the big 6-inch circle, so it's fantastic actually.
Yeah.
It's interesting because these guys they have a lot of like medium-ish size bases in this army.
Yeah.
Right? Between the Eels and the shark and the Leviathan and the Eidelons and the King. Yeah, they got a lot of dudes playing in that mid-range base space. Right?
There's no Star Drake bases in this army.
No, yeah, exactly. Nor is there there's no teeny babies like 25s, nor is there like pie plates or Star Drakes or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's interesting. Okay. There's an interesting question that was raised about the Leviathan that I don't have a good answer to. Okay. So if you look at the Alapex, right, it says the crew unleash a long-range attacks using either volleys of bolts from a razor shell harpoon launcher. Okay. So that's the wording. And it's a 24-inch range, 3 attacks, right?
Yep.
And if you look at the Leviathan, it says the Mahar, which is the guy who's on the back, strikes his enemies with his twin-pronged spear while the crew unleash volleys of long-range attacks from the 2 razor shell harpoon launchers mounted on the Leviathan's back. So is that guy supposed to get 6 shots?
No.
I'm
going to look at
saying. There's a difference there.
There is, but if he was getting 6 shots, it'd be in the profile.
I agree.
Right.
I feel like that needs an FAQ answer. All I'm saying. Give us.
I think that it's probably a wrong number.
I think so too. I think there was a mistype there, but I'd still like that to be clarified.
Did you send it in? Send it in.
I sent it in. It's already been sent in.
As long as
I
it's been
asked the
sent in.
question. I brought the question.
The Leviathan has a less efficient razor shell harpoon launcher.
Sure. He's got 2 of them, but they still only get 3 shots. Actually, there's just a universal constant. It's like the speed of light. No matter how many, you could have 30 razor shell harpoon launchers. 3 shots.
Three
Total.
shots.
Them's just the rules.
Okay.
Okay.
I like this guy. I like his utility actually, and I like that he is a great solution. And I mean, in Duality of Death, and I don't think that you have to have him in Duality of Death, like because of the way the army advances. If they can get past those points, they're going to claim the objectives. Because they're going to put like not bad heroes, but like weaker heroes on those points, and that's not going to matter for them. So you don't need this guy to hold an objective in Duality of Death, but man, he's real tempting in that type of setup where he can definitely, and he has the mobility to move up and just sit on something.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting about him and the Sharks is it's very easy to keep them wholly within 6 of a shipwreck. So they can.
Well, the Sharks are monsters, so the Sharks won't get cover.
No, the shipwreck doesn't give cover.
Shipwreck, it gives a 6-up save, a 6-up negate save. So
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about our clutch of heroes then quickly, because I want to get to some of the other fun stuff like artifacts and command traits. So we got, there's really a clutch of 3-ish run heroes I want to touch on. The Tidecaster, the Soul Scryer, and the Soul Render. Right? So let's start with the Tidecaster, because this guy's probably the most interesting and probably, I think, the most common alternate general. Right?
Probably.
I think the Eidolon is going to be pretty popular too.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I think people are going to take him with some of the traits to the Storm, the combat guy, to really juice him up even more in combat, because he is such a beast.
All right. That's true. Okay, so the Tidecaster, 6-inch move, 5 wounds, 6-up save. A lot of these dudes are going to be wearing t-shirts. Welcome to the 100-point hero brigade of like tissue paper heroes.
It's like reminiscent of the 80-point Fire Slayer brigade.
Hey, he negates the first wound every turn.
He does. That's actually a really cool ability. I dig that.
It is, because it makes them harder to plink off.
Yep.
You gotta put some effort into it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so he's got that nice little Spirit Guardians where he the first wound allocated to him every turn is negated, which is cool. But really what we're talking about is the next 2 abilities of this guy. This guy, like, I'm not even going to read his combat crap because it doesn't matter. Who cares?
Wait, no, stop. Can we talk about the fact that unlike almost every other wizard in the game,
with the staff,
he has 2 attacks.
He does have 2 attacks.
The D3 damage. He can do some work compared to other wizards.
He also doesn't have rend. A lot of wizards do have like a neg 1 rend.
Hey, shut your mouth.
Teclis taught him what's up.
That's right. Teclis taught him how to use both sides of the stick.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, well, there we go. Okay. There's a bottom on these things? Oh, man. The martial training here is incredible. Okay. So, okay. So the wide ether sea, because this is the interesting one. If this model is the general of your army, and it should be pointed out, he has no default command ability, right? Although we could solve that problem in a different way, but we'll get there. Then,
not really.
At the start of the first battle round, you can declare that the Tides of Death table will be reversed. If you do so, the Ebb Tide ability is used in the first battle round, High Tide is in second, and so on from there, right? So it goes then to Flood and low. And then it repeats in reverse order, right? So if you make this dude your general, and it's interesting because he isn't forced to do this, right?
It's optional. Yep.
It's optional. So it's actually a pretty interesting thing because I could see having this dude sort of as being my general, but depending on the opponent, I may or may not want to do that. Like, do I want to be all in on turn 2 or turn 3? Depending on the force, that could be a different answer that I'm up against, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like some people, you may not have a choice whether you're all in on turn 2. Like these are going to be in your grill on turn 2. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you know you've got a melee force that's going to be coming hard and fast, right? That's going to be really up in your stuff and basically has no shooting to speak of, right? Which, by the way, there's a ton of in the meta right now.
Absolutely.
Okay. I can think of like Nurgle, who can slingshot themselves across the board like completely by turn 2 for sure.
Yep. Daughters.
Sure. Daughters being able to do it. Probably death, depending on one of several options to get across the table between ambushing and running out from grave sites and 100 other weird deployment things and shenanigans.
Yep.
So like I could see in those situations, you definitely want to be in that way. Whereas there might be cagier fights where they're not coming to you and you want to position more, where you do want to set it up. You want to start with that cover, right? For sure, because that's the problem. Like you're sacrificing that turn 1 cover. But against an all melee army that's spending the first turn running, who cares?
Right. And you can always take a turtle to overcome that deficiency.
Yes. Or the spell. There's a spell that grants you the area within range of the spell.
It's a wholly within. I think it's 9, right?
Yeah, it's wholly within 9. It's a small bubble, but yeah.
It's tough, but it is an option.
You could protect at the very least, like, your most critical elements or something like that, right? If you had that caster sitting behind it. Okay.
I really like this when you're investing into Soul Scryers and you're flanking.
Yeah.
Especially if you're Briamdar and you're taking 3 dudes with the Soul Scryers.
Yep.
Yep.
Because especially if you can give away turn 1 and go at the bottom of 1 and play for the double turn on 2.
Yeah.
Bad things can happen.
Yeah. I know that a very competitive UK player has a alpha strike list based on these pieces, and it's going to be scary potentially.
Well, we'll see how it works out. I believe the last game he played, he in his words, he stuffed it up something fierce. So
He did.
it's like I said, it's an easy army to you make one wrong move and your house of cards could fall down.
Absolutely.
All right. So then this guy also has a pretty great spell, although it is a difficult cast, to be fair. Riptide, casting value of 7. Pick an enemy unit within 18 inches that's visible. Until your next hero phase, subtract 1 from hit rolls from that unit. In addition, at the start of your next hero phase, they suffer D3 mortal wounds. So it's an interesting little delayed arcane bolt tick, but obviously an 18-inch neg 1. We talked already about the aspect of the storm, so here's another stacky stack on that, right?
And one with reach, too. You don't have to get quite as close.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this. For my favorite Enclave, is the one that gives +1 to cast uniformly. And so, that means that this dude's on 6s for that debuff.
Yeah, it's funny because that's actually one of my least favorite Enclaves, but we'll get to the Enclaves. But yes, it does make this, this is a tough cast. You're going to fail this more than you get it, right? Or not more than, but you're going to fail this almost as much as you get it.
If he's on a Balewind in that Enclave, he's casting on 5s.
Oh my God, you can only have so many Balewinds floating around. We're gonna put the whole army on Balewinds. Everybody's on Balewinds.
It'd be really easy to model it into a cone of water.
Right.
Whatever. All right. You weren't here when I said we're gonna talk about Balewinds once, and it was during the aspect of the store or seed.
That's
awesome. And I was like, and that's done.
Nope,
no more.
I wasn't here. Ha ha! Snuck another one in.
Okay.
Suck it.
But yes, it's a good ability, certainly.
Amazing.
Yeah, great spell. Okay. So next up we need to talk about our dual the Soul Brothers.
The Soul Bros.
Exactly. The Soul Bros. All right. So we've got the Soul Scryer and the Soul Render. So Domus, since you just mentioned the rather unique and fun ability of the Soul Scryer, why don't you walk us through this guy?
So he's got some really great text, I think, for the Finder Ways rules. Basically, you can deploy him in the Ether Sea, and then you can later on take up to 2 units with him. So it is a very clear wording for things like the Rune Smiter and how to do it. If you take 2 units, it's 3 drops.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Unless you have a battalion, you take him and then you put both of the battalion guys.
Yeah, you deploy that guy, and then the battalion, everybody else goes in with him. Yeah,
exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Oh,
but not only does he do that and show up on the board edge 6 inches of the board 9 away, but then he gives +3 to charge against 1 enemy unit within 24. Which is amazing whether you flank him or not. 24 inches, huge.
Yeah, and the reality is this dude, if he takes Eels with him, they're like 6-up rerollable on that charge. Like that's probably landing. Mathematically, that's probably happening.
Is there any reason you can't have multiple of the charge bonuses? If you got 2 of these guys come in and they both pick the same unit, is there any reason why that's not +6? I couldn't find any, but before I definitively said that's the case.
That's interesting.
It doesn't seem to me like it's stating if there's any of this, then they get +3. It seems like a very direct triggered ability, right? Like, so the text is, at the start of your charge phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 24 inches of this model that is visible to them. Okay. If you do so, you must add 3 to charge rolls for friendly Idoneth Deepkin units that are within 12 of that unit.
That's it right there. You do it twice, you still must add 3.
But it doesn't have like
You're saying the must clause restricts it to only 1 +3?
That is my gut.
Yeah,
it's an interesting question. I think it would be a good one for the FAQ too.
Yeah, I agree, because it's just an interesting one because the nature of how this guy comes in and bubbles dudes around him.
Well, the reason why, like the logic of it is giving +3. They must add it because they must end their the first model's charge next to the
That's
target.
right. So you can't charge something else.
Right.
I mean, you can, but you got to clip this unit first.
Yes, and so I think I read that must, if we're talking intent, as like it's forcing you to take that bonus because it's forcing you to charge that target.
Sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting one that sort of occurred to me. I was like, is there any reason I can't like come in the board with like 2 of these guys and throw out a +6? Now, obviously, the normal restriction of you can't declare a charge against anybody, or you can't not declare a charge. Yeah, you can't declare a charge if there are no enemies within 12 inches, but you still can only charge people within 12 inches, right? So like for that first unit. So it's not like you can get at people who are whatever.
No, but that makes that a 3-inch rerollable.
Sure. Which is better.
And then he's also the only priest in the army, which is important for the rituals.
Yes, indeed. He's got that also important priest keyword. But another dude, like, when he gets over there, he better hope he brought good friends with him who are going to go stand in front of him. Because if not, he is going to get splattered against a wall real fast.
This dude has the rune smiter problem. When, like, as soon as he's on the table, he's like, okay, well, he's done. His job's over.
Bye, guys. Have fun.
You guys have fun. I'm going to go stand on a point or something.
Yeah, I'm going to walk this way.
I have nothing.
I am out of abilities now. I have done my job.
Now, I mean, realistically, I say that this dude does have 8 attacks at an 18-inch range.
The fishy attacks are interesting, right?
He's got.
It's not good.
5 up attacks. Yeah.
But it's a school of fish swimming around this model. It's freaking. That model is so great. I love that.
This guy is the dude from the Muppets who used to like toss fish around. You know what I'm talking about?
And then his finger claw melee weapon. Claw.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because he throws fish at them. It's what it is. I mean, don't tell me his ranged attack isn't. It's called Skyfish. Scryfish Shoal. He's throwing fish at them.
Yes, he indeed is.
Okay, so we're clear on that. He's throwing fish at them. All right, so which are not accurate and do not stand a high chance of wounding, but you can throw a lot of fish. Like, I've seen those guys in that market in Seattle. You can throw a lot of fish. All right. So then let's talk about the Soul Render, his buddy. And this guy is like really interesting because he is like the Namarti heavy guy, right?
Yeah, like this is the guy that you're going to stack with the Namartis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He's probably the most combat ready of the sort of Ishran because he's actually at like a 4-up save base. Yep. He has some decent-ish attacks in melee. Like he has, basically 2 plus D3 attacks, all at -1. 2 of his attacks are at 2 damage. It's not bad, right? It's not bad stuff. But the real key with him is obviously the Lure Light, where I'm not even going to read the Hangman's Knot because that is a thing that I will forget every time, ever. It's just like, that is extra bookkeeping. They, again, like, squeaky, 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 squeaky. We didn't need that. We didn't need that part. Okay. So, Lure Light. At the end of your Battle Shock phase, pick a friendly Namarti unit wholly within 12 of this model and roll a D3. Return a number of slain models to the unit you picked up to the value of the roll. Add 1 to the D3 roll for each enemy model that was slain by damage caused by this model's Talon hook. So at maximum, he could add 4, right? Assuming there's no attack bonuses or offensive bonuses.
By default, he could add 4.
Right.
There are other ways that you can increase that number.
Right. Running on base profile, he could add 4 from his weapon. Right. I think that's correct.
Yep.
Yes. And then, yeah, so there are now, you mentioned there's an enclave that adds 3 to what he does here. Yes. There's a battalion that straight turns him into 3, right?
Yep. So then you're 6 plus kills. So max of 10.
Yeah, like at the point where you're almost restoring a whole unit.
And it's Namarti. It's not necessarily just Thralls.
Right. It could be the bow, your archers.
It could be the archers.
Yep. Absolutely. So, I mean, I think that dude's cool. I think he's the kind of guy you would see in like that particular force. Yeah. Right? Like
I'm not running this dude in any other force, but a Namarti heavy force.
I put 2 in my Namarti heavy force, and I put 1 to babysit the Reavers.
Yep.
And I put 1 with the 5-up save, 5-up negate artifact, and that dude is flanking, and that dude is in combat with the Thralls, and his job is to clip a corner and kill what he can kill and bring him as many back as he can. Because he's not terrible in combat.
He's not. He's not.
And he has a 2-inch reach, unlike all the rest of those dummies.
And a 3-inch reach.
He can sit in the second rank.
And this is quite frankly one of my favorite individual hero models I've seen.
Yeah, it's a beautiful model.
This thing is it's inspired by the anglerfish. It's amazing.
This dude is a type model. He looks like Shredder. He looks like an angler. Like if Shredder and an anglerfish had a baby, it would be this guy.
A very angry baby.
A very angry baby. Yeah, that would be who this is. Okay, the Shredangler.
The Shredangler.
Exactly. Get out your Shredanglers, boys. All right. So, do we need to talk about Lotan, or can we just skip him?
I mean, what I'll say is this. Lotan's going to be good if you're Namarti. Not really. I take that back. Like, he's going to give reroll 1s to hit, but the reality is that the unit has to be wholly within 12, so it's going to be painful as all get out.
It's hard to do. Yep.
Is there a reason to use Lotan other than the fact he's a super sweet model? Because he's the octopus dude.
No.
I see use if you're going Thrall heavy. I think he potentially has a use because I don't think staying within 12 of Thralls will be hard. Staying within 12 of Reavers is going to be really challenging.
Well, because the unit has to be wholly within, even for the bravery buff.
Yep.
Like it's just so hard to make it work.
Like 12 inches. I mean, it's a 24-inch bubble off of his base, and he's a 40. So it is doable. I love him. I actually didn't put him in my Namarti list I wrote today. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's telling right there.
Yeah, it is.
It was hard to cut him out, but I did cut it. He was in it, and then I had to cut him out because I freaking love heart renders.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with this dude is that like it's not that ability is without value. It's just in this army you run out of points so fast because nothing's cheap, right?
Exactly.
That like that.
There are
dude
no
is,
60-point models.
Yeah, this dude's first cut. Well, like I made a list earlier today and I had 120 points left, and I was like, there's nothing I can like. I was already at like sort of capped-ish heroes where I wanted to be, and I was like, there's nothing I can put in here. Right, like it's the thing starts at 140. I had to go back and like retool.
Sounds like ally time.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so all right, now let's. Now that we've covered all the units, let's wind back. Let's lean back. Okay, lean back. Let's talk about command traits.
They have command traits in this army.
They do have command traits in this army. It turns out. Overall feelings on the command traits in this army. Let's just start there, and then we can talk about if there's anyone we think is a standout.
Domus, would you like to go first?
There's 2 that I like,
Okay.
And there's I will tell you straight up, none of them are so amazing that I feel like taking Volturnos as a general is a downside. which is good, right? I think that's good. But I like in my Namarti army, Lord of Storm and Sea is amazing.
Yep.
Because +2 bravery, even Holy Within 12, I think it's fantastic. But Unstoppable Fury is one I see a lot, and I think on the Eidolon or even a King, that's a pretty good command trait. So those are the two I like: is Unstoppable Fury and Lord of Storm and Sea.
Yeah, and like the Unstoppable Fury is 2 attacks during the High Tide round, right? He has +2 attacks during High Tide. Yeah. I think especially if maybe you're going for an alpha, but then the problem is you have to have that other dum-dum, so you don't have that. Like,
no, the answer is
tough one.
I could not take a command trait with this army and be like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, Born from Agony is okay because it's like, okay, the general gets 2 extra wounds. It's not a terrible thing to have 2 extra wounds on your general. But I agree. Like overall, I'm like, meh, okay.
Nightmare Legacy starts to get really interesting on an Eidolon of the Sea because now with Tsunami of Terror, there's some stuff you can do there. But I mean, I agree. It's none of these are so amazing that I feel bad taking Volturnos ever.
No, like or any of the, like, you know how so much of the enclaves, we talked about this with the Daughters of Cain, like so much of the like the houses or the temples or whatever for the daughters were like there's so much like cost benefit like pulling you away, like when you were forced to take a trait. Like, yes, those traits were good, the ward save and the teleport, but they were costly because then you couldn't like broadcast your bravery, and like that's a real cost. In this army, when that would pop up for the enclaves, I'm like, oh, that's not a problem. Yeah, no problem. I will sacrifice any trait without batting an eyelash.
I did struggle with Born from Agony a little bit because I thought about those little Iseran characters and +2 wounds. But at the end of the day, I wanted the bravery more. I got more benefit from more models from the bravery.
Right. Okay, so let's move on to the Aquiline artifacts, which are specifically for your Aquiline heroes. So the dude on the Deep Mare who isn't the named guy.
Yep.
There's a grand total of 1 guy who can take these artifacts.
That's right.
Okay, cool. So
that's why there's a spur in here for a mount, because all of them are mounted.
Yeah.
Which half does nothing?
Yes.
Right? Because the reroll hit rolls of 1 for the bearer's mount, he's already broadcasting a reroll hit rolls of 1 to himself.
Hey. Doesn't matter.
Sure, I mean, it does get +3 movement, which isn't terrible. Like, being a 17-inch movement is pretty sweet. Like,
and if he chooses himself for that for his command ability, if you're in the battalion, he has a 20-inch move.
Yeah, he can go up to 20. Yeah, I know. We'll talk about that in a minute. Yes, this dude could get to a 20-inch move, which is comical.
Who needs a 24-inch teleport? He can just move that distance.
Yeah,
that's right.
Like, that is such a ridiculous
tentacles.
And he can be +3 to charge, and it's just glorious.
Yeah. Okay.
Charge.
So a lot of this, like, there are one of the keys of a lot of these artifacts is you see the phrase once per battle.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So Domus, what stands out to you from the Aquiline artifacts? Anything?
So I'm always Volturnos, but if I wasn't, there's a couple I like, and they're situational. The Potion of Hateful Frenzy is interesting. Add 1 to hit and wound. But then you suffer a mortal wound. That's good for him. That's
call back to Battle Brew.
Yeah, a bit. I like the Armor of the Sithai. I mean, if I'm putting this guy into combat, being -1 to hit permanently, that's not bad. And then the Bioshock shell. So I don't think it's amazing, but there's a real interesting use for that. If you're in combat and you want to get out and you just need to do another wound, that might be it. I mean, so I've been stuck there with just 1 guy lingering, and an item like that just to ping off that last wound or 2 and free up from combat.
I mean, there's no trading, but in a localized area.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but I think for me, it's the potion or the 5-up save is nothing to sneeze at either. They're all, except for the last one because of the Slaanesh bit.
Oh, you're
so funny.
You're out of your damn mind, because there's 2 things. One, if Vince were to ask me, hey, Tom, what stands out to you about this set of stuff? You know what the first thing stands out to me? We have a Slaanesh release coming.
Right. Because they didn't write this weapon to say, like, so what the weapon, just so we'll read it here, is like pick a weapon, it becomes the Abyssal Blade. You improve the rend characteristic of that by 1, which is actually kind of cool on its own.
Like
because it can turn that.
Yep.
They can turn that pole arm into a -3 rend.
Yep.
Yeah, which is not a joke. But then, yes, also you get an extra damage if the target has the Slaanesh keyword, which is not present on current tables. You will not trigger that ability in the current world. You will play 100 games and never need to remember that text.
Right.
Like,
but
stands right now.
But one thing that has jumped out to me.
Oh, unless you happen to fight Archaon. Sorry, there you go. There's the one time you need to remember.
Oh, coming for you, Archaon. No, what I would say is that, but a lot of these armies, if you look at the last couple of releases, are interwoven as to how they interact in the meta and stuff like that. And so when I saw that, I immediately saw the events. I was like, what jumps out to me about the items? Slaanesh is coming. That's what jumps out to me about those items. And I like the +1 damage. Again, I like the +1 rend. I like going
the
to
+1 rend is good. Yep. I take that in Iron Jaws all the time.
Right. I mean, I take an item in Iron Jaws that's literally just +1 rend.
Yeah,
that's it.
Imagine if you got +1 damage against one of your chosen keywords. I mean, Slaanesh.
No, to make it similarly useless, it would need to be like. It would need to be like. No, like also you do +1 damage against Warherd.
Free people.
What? No, like I play free people every other week, man. I got an opponent who like runs half free people and half death. I see free people on my tables all the time.
I've never seen them, so
that's fine. I understand they are they are
a rarity.
A Bigfoot Yeti like mystery in many circles, but like in mine on the table a lot. Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the generic Idoneth artifacts, because look, there's only one thing we need to talk about on this whole list. There are all of the Aquiline artifacts are fine. They're all pretty middling. I like them all. They're whatever. Now let's talk about the thing that's busted sideways because it's so good. Okay? Can we all just talk about this one thing that actually matters on this list?
You mean the Cloud of Midnight?
I do mean the Cloud of Midnight. That is correct.
Yes.
Okay. So, Cloud of Midnight. What's this? What does this ink cloud do? Essentially, you give your general or somebody a little inky cloud. All right. Once per battle, at the start of any phase, you can release the Cloud of Midnight. You can squirt ink everywhere. Psst. I'm not going to ask where you squirted it from. That's your personal business.
I know where an octopus squirts it from.
If you do so, you cannot be chosen as the target for attacks, spells, or abilities for the rest of that phase. But they themselves cannot attack or use spells or abilities for the rest of that phase.
Okay.
So it is a 1-turn super oubliette. Right? Or for 1 phase, sorry.
Yeah. You know what this tells me?
What's it tell you, Tom?
At some point early on in the game, you lose your shooting phase.
Sure. Yeah.
But do you? I mean, so
yeah.
It depends. It depends on how mobile your shooting is.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is this: like, throw an Eildon out midfield, okay, at the top of 2.
Yep.
And then you say, and then like everybody largely stays back because you don't want to commit people early on. And so then now he's going to just hang out in the middle, like, come get me, and all of their ranged attacks, and unless they're KO and they're dropping on your side of the field, all of their ranged attacks are going to have to come in on him during that shooting phase, and they can't do that.
Yeah, but if it is the KO, I mean, you're going to put him out there, and the KO are going to drop wherever they darn well please, and they'll be like, okay, so you can do that. Well, I'm going to shoot at everything else.
Yeah, it's a really...
I like it in combat. So you put him out there, and you let the nastiest thing. I mean, he doesn't get to attack back, but if you all of a sudden nerf the combat armies,
sure. And that's one usage. You know, another usage I see for this thing,
Tzeentch.
Oh well, that's a good usage.
Yeah, surviving a Tzeentch storm.
Zeenstorm, yeah, or this is turn 3 sitting on a point in Duality of Death.
Sure.
This is staying from turn 3 to turn 4.
It's a duality
Like,
of Death Survivor. It's
like you can hold from 3 to 4, you win.
It's also an interesting stalling tactic. I agree with Domus for the combat thing, as it's an interesting stalling tactic to get you from 2 to 3. Right? If you can get the right guy locked up with them and just go, okay, this combat phase, we ain't fighting. Calling a pause on this one.
Yep.
Throw in the T. Right?
It is all a big deal in a 5-turn game to shut down one element. So yeah, against a cunning ruck, you're going to be able to shut down the shooting.
Yeah.
Well, no, you're going to shut down the shooting in either the hero phase, because this is a phase dependent thing.
Yep.
Either phase, either hero.
He'll get one round. You're right. He'll get, but that's a big deal.
It is. It is.
That's a couple hundred dice.
It's a couple hundred dice.
You are not wrong.
Okay. So the other, I mean, a lot of people have talked about this one. I think it's not as great as people have said, but I think it will. If you're not aware of it,
it's a great tool.
If you're not aware of it and you let it catch you unawares, it will absolutely turn the tide of the game. Indeed. By the way, does everybody know the Blondie song, "The Tide Is High"?
Yes.
Okay. Every time someone that I listen to any review and someone talks about high tide and the ability for high tide, that song's in my head like instantly. And I hope to curse all of you currently watching this and in the future with that same thing. So there you go. I hope that for all of you who know that song now, that's in your heads too. I'd like to pass that little mental virus to all of you.
It's a super one trick, and it's a really good trick. And I think when you play against it, you'll know it's there. So you're gonna have to commit to the bait to some extent, but I think you have to plan for it, just like high tide. You have to commit to the bait, you have to draw it out, and then you have the ability to smash after that if you can survive past all of that.
Yep.
I see it getting people's Eidolons in bad positions though.
Sure.
I think people are gonna think it's greater than it is. They're gonna shove him way out. You can't hit me. Well, okay, I charge you, and you're dead. Or I double turned you. I mean, it's super strong, but I like the turn 2 or turn 3 use better than.
Yeah, it's not the agreed. It's not the item like there's an equivalent one from Dark Elves, that I think is a little bit more effective at negating damage from the Darkling Covens in book 17.
Yeah. The other two I want to just touch on real quick because I do like them is the Rune of the Surging Tide. Okay, so once per battle, start of your hero phase, you can use the Rune of the Surging Tide. If you do so, you can say whether it's a stream or riptide. If it's a stream, you add 1 inch to the move characteristic of all your Deepkin units.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a huge buff. I know it's only 1 inch, but it's army-wide.
This is a way, like, I know it sounds, like, small. This is a way to get turn 1 6-inch charges with all of your eels off the line. Like, just a heads up, if you're running cohort for +3, their base 14, 17, 18 with this. Now those 3 eel units that are going in are at a 6-inch rerollable charge base.
Yep.
And that's not using the +3, choose a unit +3 extra move.
Right.
So we're talking you can get some eels to move across the table without deep striking them.
Yeah, exactly. If you're not in the deep striking force, it's a really interesting option. That's again, it's an army-wide +1 to move. +1 to move is a lot of extra move when broadcast across whole freaking force. Yep. Right. The other one I like is there is an element of this army where you could do a bravery bomb army. Right. Yeah. And there's little elements of it scattered around. And so the Terror Knight Venom is another one where you reroll wound rolls of 1, but you also subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of enemy units that suffer any wounds from this weapon for the rest of the battle. Which I think is very interesting because then you don't have to worry about continually reapplying or something like that, like you do with a lot of bravery debuffs, right? It's just kind of writing and it's there. Okay.
I do like the Lament too, but in a Namarti horde.
Sure.
1 use, auto pass battle shock at the start, I think that's really useful.
Real important for them.
Yes.
Yeah. For that 1 turn.
That's right. Yeah. But it's at the start. So oh, this is the turn I need it.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, and then lastly, we've got the Ishran artifacts. The Ishrans are like the Soul Rose and your Tidecaster. Obviously, you're here. You take this Lucky Charm Marshmallow. That girl.
Yeah.
You take it.
You take
This
it.
is for you. Okay. So, this is the one that I was just like, okay.
Did we pass the sand one?
No, that's in the next.
Oh, it's sorry, I forgot. They have 4 charts.
There are 4 charts. We'll get there. We'll get there.
So the lantern on this one is actually, I think, a standout. Any one unit started shooting phase, pick an enemy within 18 inch that's in cover until your next shooting phase. They get no benefit for being in cover. It doesn't have to apply in the shooting phase. So then you charge in with your eels. Now you're -2 rend. They also lost cover. It's just chipping away at the pieces.
Yeah, I agree. The other, like, the Disharmony Stones are also wacky. Like, there's going to be people who take those just because they're so wacky. Like, I'm not going to read them, but what I'll say is just look up the Disharmony Stones. If you like wacky stuff, this is an artifact for you.
Well, what I'll say is this. That lantern, by the way, helps in the mirror match.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure. Because it can pull your enemy out of cover. Well, there's another big mirror match cover breaker that we'll talk about in a minute. But okay. And then lastly, yes, the arcane artifacts. And you already mentioned one of them. So you guys should talk about arcane artifacts real quick while I go grab another drink. So talk about arcane artifacts.
I mean, for me, obviously the standout, and this is probably the standout for most people, is the Sands of Infinity. It's once per battle. Before you make a cast roll, you choose to apply it. Main cast roll for the bearer. Before making cast roll, for the bearer whose effects would normally apply in the next hero phase, when you decide to do this, if you do so, if you cast a spell successfully and it's not unbound, then the effects last not until the next hero phase, but the next hero phase after your next hero phase.
With Tsunami of Terror.
So you're going to get 2 turns out of this instead of 1.
That's right. And then you can double stack Tsunami of Terror the second turn.
Yep.
So you cast it, it goes for 2 turns, and then you cast it again on the second hero phase.
Yep.
And now they're -2 on both.
Yep.
I like the Coral Ring too. Reroll a failed casting and a failed dispel.
Yep.
So, and then I think there's an interesting usage for the bauble, and I don't hear anybody talking about it. Double the run roll.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the bauble as well. It's actually obviously the sands are like super powerful, but I really like the bauble.
It's right in Vince's wheelhouse for favorite.
Yep. I think there's some shenanigans. Again, Vince isn't going to love this, but the Eidolon of the Sea flying up, getting in the grill, popping the Balewind.
Bringing out that Balewind every chance we get.
Hey, man, if I put a Balewind right outside of 3 of your combat army.
Yeah, that's going to ruin your day.
That's going to ruin your day.
No doubt. No doubt. Yes, I agree.
I
like the bauble a lot.
You have to move 60 models back 3 inches because all it's packed together. You have to measure 3 inches out.
I'm just going to deploy everything super far apart. Okay, just
so they can take the Balewind blast and not have to move all your models.
Yeah.
The Kraken goes with the Disharmony Stone for the wacky artifacts, the Kraken Tooth.
Yep.
All right. So, okay. Yes, the Kraken Tooth. All right. So, shall we talk about the spells themselves?
Lore of the Deeps.
The Lore of the Deeps. Ooh. So, first thing I want to say real quick before we jump into the lores is that just as with the daughters, and you kind of touch on this a little bit, but there's the sacrifice idea with the enclaves, right? Yep. Some of these enclaves are going to make you sacrifice certain elements of you don't get a command trait, or you can't, or you have to take this artifact or whatever. But the most common thing, I think there's 3 of them that replace your spell. Is that right?
I don't remember the
2.
numbers.
I think there's 2.
Morphan does.
Yeah, I think it's 2.
Okay.
Either Adelar does.
There you go. Okay. So in the case of both of those, both of which I like for different reasons, but we'll talk about that when we get to enclaves.
The worst.
You hate that one of the abilities in there doesn't actually do anything, and I don't care. So we'll talk about it in a minute. You're the worst. So the but yeah, so you'll lose access to this lore with if you take that particular enclave, which is an interesting,
Yeah,
pretty big trade-off.
because it forces you to take the unique spell of your enclave on all of your wizards.
Right.
And
Now-
so, like, immediately for me, I'm just like, okay, it shuts off all of my abilities. Nope, I'm out. Like, so for me, that turns off those 2 enclaves.
I don't agree, but okay.
It's only Tidecasters. It's not the Eidolon. And that's an important distinction. It's only the Tidecaster.
Hmm.
So it's only the 100-pointer.
Yep. And it's more about army construction.
Yep.
When you're there. Like, so, but anyways, we'll get into it. So obviously I think all of these spells are interesting enough. Like, there are some standouts, which we'll touch on, but I looked at these and I was like, yeah, okay. I like this magic lore, right? Like, it read pretty well. I think the casting values all felt pretty much where they should be. We mentioned the cover one already, which is the Abyssal Darkness. Nice 5-up, cover bubble around you. Domus, you mentioned the Vorpal Maelstrom. Would you like to talk about that one? Because that is a pretty fun one.
Yeah, so that's the cast on a 6, pick a spot within 18 inches, and visible. That's sometimes harder to do than people think.
Yeah.
And then for each unit within
Not
3
if
inches
you're on a
of that
Balin.
point, well, not if you're on a Balewind, within 3 inches of that point, if it's less than or equal to the number of models in the unit, it suffers D3. So there's some debate, I'm sure, that's going to occur within the 3 inches of that point in the doubling with the Gaunt Summoner.
I would say there's not. Like, as it's currently read, all values are doubled with Balin, which means that as it's currently understood, that means it's 36 within 36 inches and a 6 inches of a point.
Yep.
Because you double everything right now, which is, by the way, infinitely hilarious to me. That if that is the case and that's the current ruling, then Arcane Corrasion, which is the number 6 spell in their list, it means that when you go on a Balewind, it gets worse because you have to be farther away to do more damage, which means that the minimum, like, if all distances are doubled, which they currently are, you have to be at least 72 inches away to do
They have to be playing on another table. You can
it's a death strikes all over again. We're start pinging on the other table.
Exactly. Yeah, it reminds me of like back in the day, back in the 90s when I was running like my Imperial Guard 40k army and I had like 120-inch range on my basilisks and I could like shoot down the tournament table. Like, I got 3 games down. Table 13, you're getting bombed. Let's go. Here comes the wave, boys.
Well, and that's what, like, and I mean, you can still get, like, that's the min range, to be clear, that 72 inches. Like, you can get 96.
Yes. So both of you are correct. Like, that is to say, what I mean by that is that, like, right now I've already heard the argument being had, so the controversy is real. And I also agree with you that, like, unfortunately, right now as it stands, it would double all of them. I don't care. As I said, this army is a living argument of fixed Balewind. Let's move on. I didn't want to talk about it more. Yeah, we've talked about it twice more.
Every army is a living argument. So
sure.
Yeah, I mean, yes. The key here is that you're going to bomb a bunch of units for multiple D3 mortal wounds. So it's a really neat effect. If you can land it early on in the game, that's going to work really well because oftentimes they're going to be clustered together. And so if you can get out and put some damage on them, that's pretty good. Yeah,
Arcane Corrosion's interesting because it's more valuable the farther they are away, right? So it's kind of an interesting spell.
But see,
I was talking about Balewinding and with Vorpal Maelstrom because it's a 36-inch range, and you can drop like Tides, other heroes and everything.
Oh, Steed of Tides.
Steed of Tides on Volturnos with a Scryer flanking your Eels, and then your Scryer gives you +3. I mean, he's going to be on a 6, but without a reroll. But I'll take that. That's good.
Sure. A 6-up is a pretty fair roll.
Yep.
Now, let's talk about Tide of Fear, because obviously it stacks with several other things we've already talked about, some other shenanigans we may have already seen. So, Tide of Fear, cast on a 6, pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of the caster that's visible to them. So again, it's close range, right? Unlike the
But it's great for the Eidolon, who's already at 12 inches to do their neg 1s already.
That's right. So now you're going to stack it twice on one unit.
Yep.
3 times if your sands it up.
Yep. So until your next hero phase,
Tidecaster, you got a neg 1 at 18 inches.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's basically another neg 1 to hit and neg 1 from Brave.
So somebody doesn't get to play the game.
Some unit does not participate in this battle. Correct, because they're going to be like neg 3 to hit. They're going to be at like I hope you can roll a lot of 6s to hit, basically. Yes. Yep.
And all those things that trigger on 6s are done. I love it.
Yeah, they
Black
should-
Kings.
They're done.
Oh,
They're done.
Yeah, it's scary. It's a scary combo. As I said, my goal is to just fight this by taking armies that just have auto hits.
there you go.
And then I'm safe. Like I'll take neg 1,000 to hit. I don't care. I will willingly take. It's fire in your face. Okay, so anywho, let's talk about rituals. So this is like, even though we have priests, we don't have
New mechanic.
prayers. Yeah, it's a new mechanic. This is kind of cool, actually. So we have a ritual, and there are 3 rituals. And in order to perform a ritual at the start of your hero phase, it's one of those at the start of triggers.
Yep.
You say which ritual is being performed, and then pick one Ishran hero from your army that is more than 9 inches from any enemy models. And that's a really important caveat on this, right? Because you can't be near the enemy to do this. And then you roll 2d6. And basically, if you get a 10 plus, the ritual goes off. Now, you're rolling 2d6 at a 10. That's a tough roll as it stands. There's lots of different ways to get bonuses. I'm not going to try to explain them all. It has to do with like Ishran priests are better. So that guy that we mentioned earlier, he benefits this, the shipwreck. Just look it up. You can get a lot of bonuses to it if you want to
stack. +5, I think we figured out is the max.
Yep. If you like really align everything.
Yep.
Okay. But there are 3 rituals here, right? So
pick one.
You get to pick one. Erosion. Enemy units don't get cover. No benefit for being in cover. Rousing. Heal a wound for every Eidolon. And in addition, you can reroll failed hit rolls and casting rolls for Eidolons. And
so
Tempest. Until your next hero phase, enemy models cannot fly.
Oh, so good.
I love the fly one. I really do. Now, it doesn't actually decrease their movement, which is funny. Like somebody pointed out the little like picture like Endrin Riggers or Sky Wardens who have like a 12-inch move with their stumpy legs. They can't fly anymore, but they're still just like they're like running along the ground real fast because they're still move 12. But that no fly again with that, like depending on the board and how you place your shipwrecks,
right?
You shut off. Yeah, that's like real board lane control on a lot of things if people can't fly. It's even funnier if people take here's the funny situation to me. How many boards have you seen where there's like a big building or a tower or something? Like, especially think of like Steve's boards at Holy Havoc, right? There's like a giant tower or something. And people will fly and just plant their big model up on top of that thing, like their Vampire Lord or something, right? Up on top of that thing. Yeah.
Sure.
And then you turn off flight when they're up there. And suddenly they have to like measure to run all the way down the side of the building. Like, oh God, this is so far. It's like, I just watched Spider-Man tonight, the Spider-Man Homecoming in preparation for Avengers. And there's that scene where he crawls up the side of the Washington Monument. Like, that's what it is. Suddenly that guy's just like, oh God, why is this so far down? He tries to run his little stubby legs all the way down there.
That's hilarious.
Yes. So I like the can't fly one, but obviously the Eidolon one would be kind of the all-comer. If you have nothing else special you need to do, that's the one you're going to do, right?
Yep. And it helps rip people out of cover, obviously, for the mirror match. Like, it's just a great all-around mechanic.
Yeah.
Gives them some interesting options.
It is. It's a nice little. It's not easy to do. I promise. It's not easy to do, but if you get it, it's a nice little bump.
Yep. All right, so let's tackle some enclaves here. We don't have a huge amount of time left, but let's tackle some enclaves.
We haven't even done battalions yet.
We'll get enclaves and battalions are all kind of rolled together, right?
Okay, go.
So I want to start out by saying, like, so Domus, I want to give it over to you. What enclaves have you liked and what you've used, and give a description of them roughly of what they do.
I really like Domhain because of the Savage Fighters rules. Reroll hit rolls of 1 for Aquiline units and Namarta units that charge that turn. So if you're not babysitting with Volturnos, that's great. But then in addition, you get to reroll failed wounds when you're fighting monsters for the Aquiline units. So now your sharks are rerolling wounds against monsters. So are your eels. And so it gives you some monster killers. And then it gives you extra Aquiline guard in the battalion if you want it. So I really like that one. I've kind of played them all. I really love Morphan. That's the one that gives you the +3 Namarti back. So if I'm doing Namarti, that's a no-brainer. But the spell, the freezing mist spell on a 6 pile inch, you can only pile inch 1 inches. That is a big deal.
Yeah, it's a backbreaker.
Yeah.
That's why I like Morphan. I know, like, your pushback, Tom, of like, oh, they can have up to 6 Namarti Thralls, but that's already in the thing.
Just to point out, the War Scroll Battalion ability does nothing, because the Namarti Corps already allows 6 Namarti Thralls in that battalion.
Yeah.
So that's a misprint. Like, that's something that needs errata, whatever that is. I don't know what it is, but it needs changed. That said, no, I get it. I get the move one thing. My issue is that, like, I'm just not sold on the Namarti force.
No.
Like, and that's what this is. Like, if you're doing this, you have to do the Namarti.
Namarti for me are something I want to grow into, just because I want to start with the Cav, and I don't want to paint all those Namarti, but I do eventually, because I love this force. I love all the models. I really want to do everything eventually.
Right.
And I'm also huge on Briamder, because then you're taking 3 units with the Soul Scryers. And then they can ignore terrain when they move as if they could fly.
Yeah, so it can get your little dudes running.
Yes.
Like, basically through terrain. Yeah.
Yeah, you can basically just jump right over your shipwreck.
Yep. Yeah, so, like, now that guy, that Soul Bro, is taking 3 units off the battlefield. Like, you can get to a near null deploy pretty fast with that in this one, right?
No. No. What do you mean null deploy?
Like, not having many things that you've initially...
Oh, you're saying on the table?
On the table, yeah.
That's that obviously is a play against some armies, but there's some you can never do.
That is a bad idea, because you will suddenly have nowhere to come in at.
That's
yeah,
right.
I agree.
Right.
The change house will zone you out in a minute.
Yes.
Yeah. But again, you don't have to.
Yes, and Joe Cryer won't even feel bad about it.
No, but I mean, again, it's one of those things where you don't have to. You don't have to walk off the board.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
You did it to yourself if you did that. You knew what you were doing.
I like the choice. I really like the choice.
Yeah, it gives you really interesting options, and, like, suddenly you can have a whole lot of people coming in from everywhere, charging pretty easily, as we just covered, right? Like, there is a thing there. A couple of the ones that I built, I really liked the Nautilar.
Yeah,
okay,
I love the spell.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so the Nautilar was interesting to me because its ability is that you can reroll failed hit rolls for Nautilar units in the combat phase if they made a charge.
No.
In the same turn.
If the target made it, if you get charged,
right. Yes,
you're re-rolling against the opponent.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, I said it the wrong way around, but yes, exactly.
Yes. So it's defense.
It's the defensive one, yes, which I like, because I feel like there are, as I mentioned, this is a one wrong move and you could be in trouble.
Yeah.
Like, army. And what was interesting to me about Nautilar is that it kind of covers some of those issues. It can help ward against that, right? Because it gives you the reroll hits when you get charged, which you generally don't want to. But if it happens, it actually puts you into a strong footing, right? And then I agree, the protective barrier, I actually really like.
It's
casting value.
Spell.
It really is. Casting value of 4. What?
Yeah.
That's actually a number I can roll. And if successfully cast, you pick a friendly unit within 12 that is visible to them, and until your next hero phase, you worsen the rend characteristic of attacks. Rend characteristic of attacks that target that unit by 1 to a minimum of. And as any good Iron Jaws player will tell you, Ironclad is a baller ability.
Yes, it is.
And being able to hand that out is pretty good.
Well, I mean, your Thralls can stand up to brutes once that's out.
Right. It would change the math just so dramatically, right?
Yeah.
Your even your offensive Eels suddenly become a lot more durable, right? When they're not suddenly getting pushed to 5 up by anything. Like just any. What I mean is that there's a lot of things in the meta that are neg 1 rend, and being able to turn all of those neg 1s to it keeps them a lot more survivable. So
it's a big deal.
Yeah, and like there's an interesting list here, I think, where you do the so you do like the standard kind of dwarven tactics of like rank and file, but where you shove like a huge eel Tokyo drift at the table have everything within pile and range behind it. Like all, like, and so you can actually like do this setup where when they come in on you, you can then just pile them in and punch them hard with a reroll hit.
Right. Yep.
So it leaves some room for
what you're saying is you purposefully let your offensive eels or whatever, your other offensive unit.
Defensive eels get charged.
Yes. And then you let your other units get pulled into combat. Like you purposely set them so to where they are going to be pulled in by that charge. And so then they just literally like step up and chop. Right. And so they're all rerolling hits.
When I did my dwarven stuff at Adepticon, that's how I would often like all of my Volkites were spaced on their 32 mils with 1 inch between them, which was 25s, which is the exact size that Longbeards needed to step up into the ranks. And I could fight Longbeards in those gaps 2 inches deep. Right. And so like it allowed for that, like to have a bunch of extra hitting power on the front that wouldn't normally be there. And this is a perfect kind of tactic for that, where you can slip up with those 2 inch reach eels and still put some damage.
Yep.
The just to quickly touch on the last one, the odd man out here, the weird one that I can't quite like, that has interesting. Certainly, I know it has interesting capabilities, but I haven't cracked it in my head yet. Is the Futhin? Okay, so Futhin is you can reroll hit rolls of 1 for Futhin units that are affected by Flood Tide.
Right.
Okay, which is turn
the run and charge.
Turn 2. The
run and charge.
Turn 2. The run and charge or run and shoot.
Yep.
And in addition, whenever they would be affected by Ebb Tide, which is the turn 4, they also instead get Flood Tide.
Do you know what the trick is here?
Okay.
You use the Ishin Tidecaster to make it so you do the Alpha Strike list
with this,
and you make it because when it flips that, Ebb Tide starts first, so Ebb Tide becomes Flood Tide, which means that you start with reroll 1s to hit on turn 1, run and charge.
Run and charge. Yep.
Yeah. So you like in already flipping the chart, you then flip it again so that you're basically like reroll. You're reroll 1s to hit and run and charge. Auto strike first, reroll 1s to hit, run and charge.
And the mounts reroll wound rolls a 1.
Right. So yeah, and the mounts reroll wound rolls a 1. And so now you're for the first 3 turns, you are just a monster in combat.
And this one has been really popular from what I've been seeing.
So. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's funny. I knew I hadn't looked into it. I read it and I was
you knew there was something there.
Yeah, I read that and I was like, I know there's a way to mess with that. I just hadn't put it together yet in my head. But yeah, you're exactly right. Okay.
It's funny that you say all of this. My favorite one by far is the Iorak. It's the kind of at the top of 1. Their generic ability is plus all their wizards get +1 to cast and unbind.
Yep.
They have a ridiculous command trait which lets their ally units gain the flood tide or the tide abilities so they can hide, and I don't care about any of that. Again, I wrote off my trait a long time ago. To me, the selling point here is that I get the +1 to wizards because all of those -1 to hit ability or spells were at at target numbers 6s and 7s. So this moves it to 5s and 6s, which is a lot more manageable. And then on Balewinds, it moves me to 4 and 5s. So suddenly all those minuses are much back into the or all of those minuses to hit are much more easily landable at each cast. And then on top of that, I love the Royal Court Battalion. It's the hero battalion.
Yep.
And normally it's we're going to talk about it here in a minute, but this is actually this is the right increase. None of the other increases really enticed me other than maybe the 2 Leviathans battalion. But this one actually, I could see myself using this multiple times. The battalion increase.
Yep.
So
and
to me,
I really like the allied units getting the bonus. There's a lot of juice there, dropping down a prime, dropping down heart renders.
Yep. Yeah, imagine a prime coming in at the top of 3, or fully charged up. He comes swinging in with priority. That dude's gonna do some work.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about battalions. I think that's the last mile here. To me, I think the Royal Council is the standout.
Yep.
It's expensive-ish. None of these are super cheap.
No,
I'll say
none of them are like 80 points, 60 to 80.
Yeah. The Royal Council is basically like an Aquiline King bolded, so it could be Volturnus or the generic guy,
Yep.
and then a
By the way,
Tidecaster and a
before
Soul
we're over
Squire.
tonight, I want to talk about him because I missed him and I'm pissed. So we're going to talk about him to wrap up the show.
Oh, good. Okay, well, let's all hear Tom complain about how this guy's better than Brock. Okay, well, that's
and that's
spoilers.
That's
I am pissed because of how good this name guy is for 280 compared to Brock.
Yeah, so like obviously drop wise, this battalion isn't doing a lot, right? Like, because it's 3 heroes. Like, I mean, it's not nothing, but it's not.
But it
moving
goes
the
to
world
5
on drops.
heroes in Iorak.
And
Sure.
and really, when it shines is when you pair it with its buddy across the page. Well, if you have the book, the
Right.
Aquiline Corpse.
Yep.
Because then you can get to 2 drops pretty easy.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah, that is how you get to 2 drops. Yep.
Right. Which is like one of the only realistic ways you're going to get down that low in a lot of circumstances, right? And it's
In this
you
army.
are on some tight rails in this army if you want to get to low drops. Like,
Yep.
Otherwise you're going to tend to be at like 5 to 8 pretty easily. If you go off of those rails, you will end up in 5 to 8 pretty easy.
Yep.
The interesting thing about the Royal Council is it does give you a new command ability for your Aquiline King, as long as like the 3 of them are humping close to each other, right?
Sure.
Then he can do a thing where basically you can pick up to 3 friendly units wholly within 12 inches of him and add 3 to their move characteristic.
Which and this is that
Eels.
secret when I talked about like getting
17-inch eels.
Yep, 17-inch eels, 18-inch with the item. Now you're at 6-inch rerollable charge off the line.
Yep.
Yep. And if you have
If
your
you
other
take-
dude pop in,
You're at 3-inch,
you're 3-inch rerollable on the line.
almost auto.
It's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
It's decent-ish.
Yeah, and I like that, by the way, better than the deep striking eels because you can be anywhere on the board to send them across the table.
Right.
It depends on the board. I still so that's the thing for the Scryer for me that makes me love him is you can use him to deep strike, and if not, he's still worth it for the +3 to charge.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's true.
Absolutely. So the next one's the Aquiline Corpse, which is all right. I'm going to be straight honest with you. My problem with this one is that I have to take it. Like, I like it for the Aquiline Guard, and I like that in the one enclave I can add more.
You're going to say the Alapex, aren't you?
But I have to take a Leviathan and a shark, right?
Oh,
It's actually the turtle that bothers me the most.
The turtle is the one I don't want to take either, but
Yeah, because he's
Aw.
such a big hit. Like, no, I love the turtle,
Aw.
but like if I'm really trying to go all in on eels, man, that's a big cost to pay for this, right?
But I like the turtle.
I like the turtle too, Tom.
the turtle's amazing. I love the model. I'm gonna use my first list is 23 models, and it has a turtle, and it's this battalion centric. But yeah,
But
I
wouldn't
would
take
love
the
to be able to drop the turtle and still have this battalion.
Sure.
Well, the mechanics actually are based on the turtle, so that's probably.
I understand. Yeah, it's because everything's revolving around the turtle, and it's basically like you get to reroll 1 hit, wound, run, save,
Yep, it's the drums. It's all about
charge,
the
So,
drums.
can I ask
blah
a
blah
question?
blah. Wholly within 12 of the
Can I ask
limit.
what your reading is on this? When it says reroll 1 hit, wound, save, run, or charge roll, is that a single dice in that type? Or is that all of the dice in that type? So, for example, if I were to have an Alapex and shoot all their little
Shots.
guns, and let's say I shoot my 4 spears, my 3 damage spears, and I miss all 4 on damage, can I reroll all 4, or is it one of those 4 dice?
The way it says roll, so to me that would be all 4. Because like if it was a charge, it's a charge roll. You would re-roll both.
Right,
dice.
you roll both dice.
Yeah.
So what if? So if it's your 4 your shark unit, it'd be 40 attack rolls, or is it only rolls that miss? You see what I'm saying? Or is it just all? Is it failed rolls?
No, it's just
re-roll 1 hit. So I would say you'd have to re-roll it all if you're going to re-roll it.
yeah, because it doesn't say reroll 1 die, right? Which is what you would expect if it was really limited to 1. It's a strange phrasing that probably again, I haven't FAQ'd this one, but it feels like this one wants an FAQ.
Well, the reason why I bring this up is because I know why they didn't. I know I have a reason, or I get a good feel for why they didn't say failed roll, because sometimes like a charge roll isn't going to be long enough, and so you want to actually re-roll something that like may be successful but not as successful as you need it to be.
Well, same with the save. You can be stuck in the save gap, right? Where you know
Yes.
it's a failure, but you don't get to reroll it. So, like, again, this will let you overcome that. It
Right.
feels to me like it's literally like one die, but then that seems like a really strange ability for like just one thing for this whole battalion.
I feel like it's going to be the roll, but to me, you're going to take the successes with the fails if you're going to reroll all or none.
Yeah, it's kind of all or nothing thing.
Yeah, which to me, it's you're not going to do it on hit rolls, but you're going to do it on like wound rolls.
Well, you might if you rubber lance.
Oh,
so
yes,
that's where I think it comes into play and it shines, because if you rubber lance, then
and it's per phase, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
once per phase,
once per phase. So you do this in the shooting for your Alopexes. You do this in your melee for your eels. You do this.
Once per phase for one unit, wholly within that.
Right.
There's Tom with his 4 Alopexes.
Exactly.
I'm doing it. Like I already got
board.
a laser shark unit, but like the laser shark unit's coming.
You better have Shark Party queued up. That's all I'm saying. Like Anthony Jeselnik's Shark Party joke video. Whenever you rerun that army. All right, so let's keep moving. The Namarti Corpse is obviously the Namarti Corpse. It's the thing with Mr. Soul Fisher, and a bunch of Namarti. Like you can have a metric ton of these guys in this battalion. Like you can have up to 10 units of Namarti in this battalion.
Yes,
still
that's
not
really expensive.
That's a lot. That's a lot of dudes.
You're gonna kill things, Tom.
And yes, the big ability is obviously that the Soul Render, when he uses Lure Light, it goes from D3 to 3. Like you don't roll,
the question is
auto 3.
Are you killing more things with your shooting than like how this is a terrible comparison, I recognize that. How do you compare with your no Ren shooting to the Kunnenruck? Like, do you have comparable no Ren shooting to them? If no, then it's probably not competitive because they're barely competitive.
I mean, says the guy who has like up and down praised dumb short range axe throwing. Is like, well, it's just a lot of shots. You know, it can do wounds.
It is
die to it
from a non-shooting unit. That's the key. But these are dedicated shooters, and that's the problem.
They're decent enough in melee. They brought swords, okay?
At 140 points.
They're objective holders, and they can pew at the same time.
There you go.
So at range, they have as much firepower as Glade Guard at almost double the cost.
Glade Guard.
All right. So then next up is the Phalanx. We got to move this along. It's 1 a.m.
Sure. Go.
All right. Next up, we got the Phalanx, which is the mega battalion of sorts, right? Because it's a Royal Council. 2 to 4.
Something that will never see the table of
and 2 to 4 Namarti Corps.
Yeah.
I haven't done the math. What is the minimum points on this? It's got to be huge.
Got to be a lot. I just skipped it.
I have not done the math on this, but I am pretty sure it is.
It's too many is the answer.
A lot.
But the ability is so good.
I'll bet it is. It should be, considering it's never going to get used.
Any battle round you can choose High Tide to be your battle round.
Yes.
Period.
I'll do the math. I'll do the math on what the minimum is on this sum. If somebody else wants to do it in the comments, go ahead. But otherwise, I'll do it.
I can tell you that it's 540 in battalion costs before this battalion.
Yeah, I understand. Which is, hey, it's one of the cheaper ones. So you got that going for you. Okay.
It's offensive, by the way. Let me just say that one of the actual enclaves like buffs this battalion. Like, I don't know if you caught that or not.
I didn't catch that.
Who was it? It was
it's offensive.
Like, it is offensive because they know when they write these that these are never going to get played.
Well,
and
not competitive play.
Like, I'm sorry, it's for the Fewthon, and so they're like, what that may as well say is bleep bloop. Sorry, bleep bloop. That's all it says. It's like bleep bloop.
It just says like Yeah, under that ability, it just says like these are words. It
These
might as well
are
be
words that no one's ever going to read
the
because
generic ipsum lorem text that you use when you're testing code because it is as useful as that.
that should be the proverb that's there is just ipsum lorem.
Yeah, like I've got the same. I complained about this with Marathi's High Council or whatever, and I'm going to complain about it again now. I get why it's there. Ha ha ha. That's cute. We don't need it. It's just like, yes, I understand narrative. Da 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 da. Okay, cool.
Yes, as Rob Johnson says, it should be like glub glub. Like there's just like bubble noises.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
That's
all right. So then finally, the most interesting one to me. I love this last one. I really do. Like I was like, oh, hello. The Alliance of Wooden Sea. So it's a mixed Sylvaneth Deepkin battalion, which is basically like a Tidecaster, 2 units of a Kellen Guard, some Thralls, some Reavers, an Alapex. Yeah, Shark Party.
Alapex unit.
Exactly. You know what goes with trees? Sharks. It's obvious. That's the nuts and gum combination we've wanted forever. And then a Branch Witch, 2 units of Dryads, and a Tree Lord Ancient.
I can't even. Like I looked at this and I was like, maybe, nope. Like as soon as I started looking.
This will fit. You can get this into 2,000 points. Like
no, you can. You can. Absolutely. I don't know what this is doing. Like, how is this killing anything?
How is it killing stuff? You have 2 units of a Kellen Guard. What more do you need?
You need 4 sharks.
Yeah. You got sharks. You got eels. What do you mean how you killing stuff?
You can't fool me. No.
You got a Tree Lord Ancient. What do you mean how you killing stuff? It's obvious.
I don't know most of this. Like, what is that Branch Witch doing?
Casting spells, arcane bolting, killing stuff. No, I don't remember which spell she has.
I don't even know what she does.
I literally do. I can't even keep the 2 of them straight. Even I play the army. It's like right there in this, and I literally can't keep the 2 of them straight.
Yeah, like
in the middle of the battle, I'll forget
is
which one I
summoning
have.
force that he can't do anything with, because they can't teleport without the Legion.
You can still hide Dryads in them woods, homie.
And you can still zone out the board. And
That's right. Now you can summon trees and
shipwrecks.
boats. That's right.
Shipwrecks
Right.
on top of trees.
That's right. It's just
Guys, you are no. Like the only thing that's even mildly enticing with this army when I look at this
is you could very easily 1-drop this army.
No.
Okay.
No. There's
could.
no power gaming here. Like that ship has long sailed. That's out with the KO like submarine boat out there. Conversion army. No. Is to convert all of these stupid dryads and trees and forest into coral reefs.
Oh, that's kind of a cool idea.
And to do this as like an animated coral reef army. And actually do like the Sylvaneth Wildwoods using like the Death Forest things that look like reefs. And actually to turn this into like a reef army. And do aesthetics. Like that's the only thing that's mildly interesting about this to me. Is the hobbying possibilities.
I don't like Sylvaneth, so
hence the hobbying possibilities is going a different direction than what they've done. Is doing like staghorn coral dryads. You can look it up. Go Google it.
Go Google it. That's the kind of expert advice you get only on this show.
Well, I'm talking about images. I'm talking about the aesthetics.
Sure, I understand. It's just funny to me.
But you have to shave off all the leaves on the dryads, by the way.
Sure. No, that's fair.
No, it's not. It's
all right.
But
So,
at least all your battle line is covered. Like,
how much is this battalion, by the way?
I don't know.
I think somebody said it was like 1,600 points.
No, I'm looking at like how much is the battalion itself?
Oh, the battalion itself, yeah.
Too much.
140. So that means yes, 1520 is the min cost on this. If you min out every unit, you're at 1520, and yes, you have your battle line covered.
Yeah,
because the dryads are battle line.
Yep. So
I mean, what I would say ultimately, like with this,
look at that 1520. Tom, what's killing stuff? your aspect of the storm that you still easily have room for in there. But now 2-drop in the house.
Really?
We're good to go. Good to go.
You're out of your mind.
He's doing it. He's bringing it home. You can fit all that tree goodness, forests, shipwrecks, Eidolons, coral dryads. Boom. The army writes itself. I don't know what to tell you, man. All right there.
No, I mean what I think in the long run, what's going to be interesting about this army is, I mean, everybody's obviously like fully encompassed and engrossed in trying to build this out. I'm really interested to see what this looks like when people really latch on to the allies and to really dig into what this army can do with allies.
Sure. I mean, they've got interesting units, including like Sylvaneth and Wanderers, right? And stuff like that. They do have Eldritch Council.
Ally alignments. Like they have a bunch of high elves in there, which is like the first time we've seen kind of this. Everything has been kind of ghettoized, dark elves, high elves, dwarves. And so it's neat to see like Eldritch Council here. So you can, bring in a dragon and some, or some sword masters or something. Like
And
there's options. Say what?
There's no easy button Phoenix.
Yeah, there's no easy button Phoenix, which those points should be adjusted anyways. But like there's Shadow Blades, which is interesting to me. There's Scourge Privateers, so you can get like a Charybdis, and like you can go with the pirate themed army. Like there's just lots of interesting options, in my opinion. So I'm interested to see where people go with it, is what I would say.
20 heart renders.
20 heart renders. Sure. You don't have to tell me 20 heart renders and a hag backing them up. Or not heart renders. What am I saying? No, not heart renders. Those are the cheap ones. Those are the cheesy ones. I'm talking about the melee monsters that are the 40 mil base.
The heart renders are 40s.
Yeah, I know.
He's trying to make life takers work, and he's wrong.
I'm going to make life takers work.
You're wrong.
You're here to hear first, folks. Life takers are going to come in hot.
You're just wrong. After building my first 5, by the way, and seeing the size of what these things take up, I was like, Tom is wrong. Like, I was like, that's it. You're definitely wrong. No.
I'm going to take a 20 unit of them in our 1,000-point game. A 20 unit of these heart rate or these whatever they're called. I don't even know what they're called. Doesn't matter. They're coming in.
Better model your warlord to look like the Wicked Witch of the West. Then that's all I'm saying. All right. It's going to be a bunch of flying monkeys doing all your work for you. So, okay.
Hey, they're going to be battle shock immune and re-rolling hits and wounds and everything.
All right. So that covers the Deepkin. I think we've fleshed this out. I think we've gotten to the bottom of this. Boom.
We've scaled it out.
There you go. Absolutely. So we've emptied out all the steerage. We're good to go. Let's get some closing thoughts here real quick. So, Tom, you go first because I want to give Domus the last word here.
Sure. Volturnos is super undercosted. No, he's well costed. Brock needs a revision. That's all I'm saying. More seriously, what I would say is that I think that there's some really interesting possibilities. Like I think the army itself is interesting. I think that it'll be competitive. But it'll need the right hands. I don't think most players will. I don't know if most folks have the kind of the finesse to actually make this work. Just because it's a very finicky army. In how like what models you remove, how things are positioned. If you get any of that wrong, even by an inch or two, it could go south real quick with this force. I think that. At the end of the day, the army is not as appealing for me for a variety of reasons. But what I would say, I think that is interesting to me, other than sharks with lasers, is there's some really interesting pieces here for allies, or for like mixed order armies and stuff like that. Like, man, that Eidelon of the storm, or I'm sorry, with the sea. Or both of them.
You mean storm?
Like, no.
You're talking in mixed order. Okay.
Mixed order, the sea. I've already looked at that in my dwarves army and trying to figure out a conversion for the sea. And then aspect of the storm for like allies. Like there's some really interesting combos here that I'd be really interested in
You
exploring.
can't take the C. He's 440.
Well, that's what I said. Like you can't do the C as allies, but you can do it in mixed order.
Yeah.
And then for the storm, and with 2 spells and the dude doing his penalties and all that, like he's and then you could throw like a +1 damage item on him, so he actually has 3 damage attacks.
Double
anyway.
Phoenixes. He's pretty tasty.
Yeah, he's pretty tasty. Anyway, so I think that there's good options here for both like mixed order and for allies, in addition to the army, which I think will be okay. Like I said, I'm more attracted to the Aquiline stuff, but I think there's a lot of fun stuff here.
All right, Domus, your final thoughts, sir.
So I agree with a lot of what Tom said. I'm super interested in the Aquilians, or as Dan would say, the Aquilans. Dan Heelan.
Heelans. Heelans.
I love the Eels. You could get 7 units of 3 for like 1,200 points. That's a lot of Morsar hitting the table. I love a 9-man unit of Ishlayan. That's a hard unit to move, especially if you can heal any of it back. And I do think it's going to be a challenging army. I think that there's a big potential for a lot of people to jump in, and I think there's a big potential for a lot of people to jump back out. You're going to have to stay with it, and you're going to have to really practice. And it's just going to be one of those armies you have to work with. And this is what I love about it. I love the challenge of it. It brings me back to the Wood Elves I used to love. You gotta hit hard and fast. You gotta strike very surgically, and then you gotta get out. You cannot stay in long combats. That is terrible for you.
Domus, would you say there's a lot of bad matchups for this army in the current meta?
I think there are bad matchups, but I don't know if I would use the word a lot any more than I think every army has a lot of bad matchups. So I don't think there's more than anybody else. I think the big armies, the big unfun armies. I say that word. I don't want to use it, but I do. The big block of Volkites, 120 Volkites with this army is a tough grind. And at that point,
Nurgle, like 120 witch, dark daughters.
Yep.
Death with blocks of skeletons. Like there's some like the most current armies. There's a lot of, I would say, bad matchups.
I mean, it depends. So again, it depends on your version of this army. Like a Namarti-based force could, played properly, will blow skeleton units up.
It's all about the scenario. This army is fast enough to do what it wants to do, and if you're not exploiting that in every turn, then you're doing it wrong. And that's the real key: is you don't have to fight 120 skeletons. You can fight 40 and wipe them off.
Right.
And then fight 40, and then fight 40, and that's what this army is going to have to do. It's going to have to pick its battles real carefully. So I think there's a lot of power here. I don't think it's broken or OP in any way. I don't think it's going to be the next Zinch.
No,
by any
definitely
means. But I think it's very capable, and I love the nautical theme. So that was just instantly sold for me. I was surprised when they revealed the models because I thought we were going to get merfolk. I was really kind of hoping for that. So at first I was kind of like, oh, this isn't what I thought, but I love them. I think they're great. The eels, being one piece for the eels, is a great design feature, I think. So there's no mold lines. There's no gap filling on those eels. In the halfway point.
Yep. No, it's incredible model design. They've been knocking it out of the park recently, like on all the releases. It's been like they are elevating their game on the plastic model thing. I was reminded again of how genius they are when I was putting these little girls together. Like these are some of the best models I've put together. These and their little canary sisters.
Yeah.
They're stupidly easy to put together, and the way that they hit everything, like these are the best two-hand. Normally I hate double-handed weapons. These are a dream. They're so easy.
I usually hate them too, so it's good to hear you say that.
These slide into place like butter. You can't screw them up. And look at how far away they are from the body, so you can still get in there and paint. Right?
I mean, they really have. They've always kind of been the leader in the plastic game, but they've really just kind of said, "Later, guys." And just ran away from all the competition.
Yep, it's true. All right. Well, there you go. Thank you all for watching. It's very late, I know, but we appreciate this extra you watching. I hope everybody enjoyed this bonus episode of the Deepkin review. A very special thank you to Domus, sir. It has been a pleasure to finally get you on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
All of your insights are greatly appreciated. As a final note, for those who have stuck with it to this point, I'll go like this. Okay. And
an apron made. Very nice.
And so I'm trying to work out, this is what it looks like. I'm trying to work out here's my little test one. I think it's totally awesome. Shout outs. Absolutely to Anthony. Thank you. This is beyond amazing. We're going to try to work out how to make this all happen. So that's all in progress. There were questions about it. And so there you go. Those of you who had eagle eyes may have also noticed something from last Wednesday's show that Tom had that may also become available. I'm not going to say anything else. I'll let you notice if you did. But there you go. But for all of you who watched, thank you very much. Domus, thanks again, brother. Can't wait to have you back. And as always, we'll see you next time.